Lord of Mysteries, Amon, I'm here to steal your throne by Zhi Chi Rou Zong. Chapter 1-25. LotM Kingdom, Tingen City. In the underground office of Blackthorn Security Company, Captain Dunn Smith and Kornli White sat facing each other, with 2 steaming cups of coffee in front of them. Are you ready, Kornli White? Dunn asked with a serious expression. Yes, Captain, I've decided to become a Beander from a clerical worker and join the Nighthawks team. Please approve, Kornli said with a very relaxed expression. Dunn's expression remained unchanged. 7 months have allowed you to understand the importance of this job. I believe this isn't a hasty decision on your part. You should understand the dangers involved. That's true, but it only strengthens my resolve. Since that's the case, you should know which potion to choose. Dunn spread his hands. As you know, the church has 4 sequence 9 potion formulas. The first is the Mystery Prior, which Old Neil possesses. As you know, a Mystery Prior has a comprehensive but preliminary understanding and mastery of mystical knowledge such as magic, witchcraft, and astrology. They know many ritual spells, but they can easily perceive certain existences hidden behind things, so they must be extremely careful and filled with reverence for Beander powers. However, we lack most of this sequence. The Sanctuary might have it, but it's not a complete system after all. The second is my sequence. The name of the sequence 9 is Sleepless. Their abilities become stronger in the night. The deeper the night, the more abundant their physical strength and energy. Their inspiration, stamina, agility, and thinking are also extraordinary. They only need a few hours of rest each day. I believe this is a good choice for you, as we have an almost complete potion formula for this sequence. This means that as long as you remain in the Evernight Goddess Church and make enough contributions, you can obtain the potion for the next advancement. Potions are not cheap. Even if a high sequence potion is just a formula, it can fetch a good price. The third is Corpse Collector. Many of those cultists in the southern continent who worship death choose it. After consuming this potion, they will be mistaken for kin by unintelligent undead and thus avoid attack. They can endure cold, decay, and the erosion of death aura, directly see some evil spirits, understand the characteristics and weaknesses of many undead creatures, and gain some physical improvements. We have the subsequent Sequence 8 and Sequence 7 for it. You met Miss Daly 3 months ago, this was her choice. The fourth is Seer. We only have 2 sets of ingredients for this potion left. If you choose this potion, I am not sure if the Sanctuary has the subsequent formula. Do you want to make your choice now, or wait until Monday? The time is in your hands. Dunn picked up the coffee in front of him and took a sip. The bitter taste made him lean back in his chair contentedly. Captain, in fact, the potion I want to choose is none of the above. This is also why I came to you today, Kornli said. I heard Old Neil say that during the recent arrest operation, you obtained a newly concocted potion. In Old Neil's divination, the name of this potion is Marauder. Dunn was stunned. He and Leonard had just caught 3 criminals in a basement in a nearby neighborhood. One of them was concocting a potion and had just finished it when Leonard pinned him to the table before he could drink it. Fortunately, the potion did not spill. To choose this potion, you need a sufficiently convincing reason. Dunn's eyebrows furrowed together. Kornli took a sip of coffee. The slightly bitter taste made him feel comfortable. He briefly thought about the order of his words for 2 seconds. Captain, you know that if the team has a variety of Beander abilities, it can greatly assist us in our daily activities of apprehending criminals. The team doesn't lack mystery priors, and there are nightmares and corpse collectors like yourself, but there isn't a marauder. I was next to Old Neil when he divined the effects of this potion earlier. According to the divination results, this potion can increase my agility, give me excellent observation skills, and enhance my ability to use short swords and daggers. This is an excellent choice for me, not only beneficial for reconnaissance but also providing a certain degree of attack and self-preservation capability. Moreover, this can also give the team a completely new perspective. You mean, to understand their thinking from a marauder's perspective. Dunn rubbed his chin with his left hand. That is indeed a new perspective, but why not choose Seer? The team also lacks a seer who can go on missions. If it's just divination, Old Neil's divination ability is already very outstanding. Even if he doesn't go on missions, he can still provide us with enough help from the back. Leonard said that during the arrest just now, one of the criminals tried to squeeze through the narrow window crack in the basement to the ground. His body suddenly became very flexible, and he almost got away. So, I'm guessing whether this potion can change one's height after consumption. Kornli spread his hands. After all, this is the greatest annoyance of my life. Dun's lips curled slightly. That is two reasons convincing enough for me. We all know that you are a devout believer of the Evernight goddess, and in these past 7 months, you have proven your ability as a clerical worker. After signing this contract, you can become a full member of the team. Captain Dun took out a standard contract from the drawer. Stamp here, here, and here. Kornli nodded, took out his stamp, and solemnly pressed it in the places Dun pointed to. Dun took back the contract, pulled out his own stamp from the first drawer, pressed it solemnly at the beginning and the end, put the contract back into the drawer, and extended his right hand. Welcome to the team, Mr. Kornli White. Captain. Kornli White reached out and shook Captain Dun's hand tightly. Since you are ready, the longer the potion is left, the worse its effect will be. Kornli nodded, got up, and went to Old Neil's office. According to his understanding of the captain, he must have forgotten something. By the time he remembered to ramble a bit, and Kornli patiently listened, the potion would have expired. He had to leave quickly before Dun reacted. Kornli, you haven't left work yet. Old Neil was tidying up his desk. On the second shelf of the bookshelf behind him, a dark blue potion bottle, with gray light spots and a swirling layer of misty fog at the mouth, was emitting faint black light. Is this the Marauder potion? Kornli took the potion and observed it carefully. That's right, it's a pity we don't have a suitable team member to take it. Now you do. Kornli opened the bottle and, under Old Neil's astonished gaze, gulped it down without hesitation. The cool, obscure liquid slid down his throat, making him feel uncomfortable as if he had swallowed the tentacles of an octopus whole. The tentacles smoothly slid from his esophagus into his stomach, and a chilling coldness permeated from within, instantly rushing through his limbs and bones, as if the heat from his body was being slowly drawn away by the potion. Kornli's body went limp, like an uncooked intis noodle, and he collapsed onto the floor. A sharp, piercing pain erupted deep within his skull, as if someone was stirring his brain with an ice pick. His vision began to distort, and the light from the gas lamp in front of him rapidly faded and lost color, as if erased by an invisible rubber. The walls, furniture, his hands, and Old Neil in front of him, the world was rapidly losing its original colors, turning into countless shades of gray. His hearing became extremely acute. He could hear his own rapid breathing and the frantic pounding of his heart between his ears. Thump, thump, thump. Kornli's muscles trembled in subtle, irregular spasms, as if every cell was undergoing silent, high-frequency, jumping, training. His bones seemed to emit faint, almost inaudible creaks, as if undergoing some internal structural reshaping. His shadow under the gas lamp seemed to gain an independent will. His skin felt extraordinarily sensitive, able to perceive the faintest air currents. At the edge of his consciousness, fragmented pieces of information, not his own, began to flash. The subtle granular feel of an insect's toes touching the floor outside the door, the sound of his colleagues playing cards in the next room, the sound of Dun's sofa chair rocking back and forth as he drank coffee in the adjacent office, all formed into a series of images before his eyes, flowing like a succession of pictures. All things in the world can be stolen. A flash of understanding flowed through his mind. He blinked his eyes, and colors returned to his vision, so vivid and fresh. The air he breathed seemed to have a sweet, cloying taste, a mixture of essential oils and dried flowers in the room. He was a marauder now. Damn it, you should have told me when you consumed the potion. Old Neil watched Kornli prop up his upper body from the floor with trembling hands, then extended his right hand. Kornli took Old Neil's hand and stood up from the floor with a slight push of his feet. The thick muscles of his arms became soft yet full of power, extending from his clothes, nearly 20 centimeters longer than before. His once well-fitting trousers now exposed almost 15 centimeters of ankle, looking as ridiculous as an adult stuffed into ill-fitting children's clothes. If I told you, would you first play a round of Gwent, sing a theatrical ditty from Masick, or bring out my 7-stringed harp to play a serenade? Kornli smiled, stretching his body. His joints made creaking sounds, like a puppet that hadn't been sufficiently lubricated. You've grown taller, it's a miracle. Old Neil scrutinized Kornli from head to toe. This potion increased your height, which is a good thing. Still a bit shorter than Captain Dunn, Kornli clicked his tongue. This is truly a moment worth celebrating. How about a cigar? I can clearly smell 2 fine East Balam cigars hidden in your drawer right now. Remind me to hide the cigars somewhere else. Old Neil helplessly pulled an unopened cigar from his drawer and tossed it to him. Today has been very busy. What I need most right now is a cup of hot milk and that soft bed at home. Come find me tomorrow, and I'll teach you relevant mysticism knowledge. Old Neil walked past Kornli and patted his shoulder. Are you sure this is your best choice? He muttered softly, picked up his overcoat and hat from a nearby shelf, and quietly walked out the door. Kornli heard old Neil's slow footsteps ascending the stairs and the sound of a door closing. He sighed softly. If he didn't become a Beander, how could he, a transmigrator, face the ubiquitous fear and danger of this world? He gently closed the office door, walked up the stairs. On the second floor, only Roseanne, who was reading a newspaper, remained in the office. Kornli did not disturb her evening reading time, walked downstairs, turned right, and walked 2 streets to Lilac Street number 12. He pushed open an iron door, walked up the creaking stairs, and opened his own room door. This was his room. Or rather, this was the room of the original owner of this body, and he had only transmigrated less than 2 days ago. He took a shower, dried his body with a towel, and wiped away the mist from the mirror. He looked at his new body in the mirror, brown hair, fair skin, 1 meter 80 in height, with firm and powerful muscles all over, as if every cell contained sufficient explosive power. A scene from when he first transmigrated flashed in his mind. He stood behind a high-backed chair, the man in the chair wearing a familiar semi-tall silk top hat and formal attire, with a cane leaning against the high-backed chair. Opposite the two was a bronze long table, on either side of which men and women sat separately, looking at the head of the table with expectant and worshipful eyes. A ethereal female voice echoed in his mind, I will give you an opportunity. If you succeed, you too will have a chance to stand at the peak of the cosmos. Our enemies are everywhere. This was the oracle of the Evernight goddess. Although, Lord of the Mysteries, was his favorite novel, who could guarantee that things in the real world would proceed according to a predetermined path? Unforeseen variables still existed, and he absolutely could not deal with problems solely based on memory, ignoring the enemies hidden in the shadows. Following the footsteps of the fool was what he should do most right now, and it was also relatively safe. As fellow transmigrators, the 2 compatriots from Earth should naturally look out for each other. He had already seized this opportunity, the rest depended on his own efforts. He put on his now slightly small vest and shorts, and walked to the window. The crimson moonlight illuminated Tingen city. The surroundings looked peaceful and tranquil, but the undercurrents and dangers hidden beneath the moonlight and darkness were everywhere. Praise the goddess. He drew the crimson moon, representing the Evernight goddess, on his chest. This also meant that Kornli had, from his heart, accepted the Evernight goddess's contract. The first thing tomorrow would be to find Captain Dunn to sign the contract, and incidentally, meet everyone with his new identity. No, that's the second thing. The first thing is to buy several new sets of clothes. As for weapons, he just needed to submit an expense report to Captain Dunn, and he could search for suitable weapons in the armory. After all, he was already a combat team member. He climbed into bed and was soon fast asleep. At 8 o'clock the next morning, he first went to Bakerly's Menswear, next to his home. The owner, Bakerly, greeted him warmly. Sorry, we only have one suitable formal suit, but if you order now, you can get a brand new suit in 3 days. Backlund sized him up, pulled out a tape measure, and measured various parts of his body. Your figure is very well proportioned. I believe this suit is the best fit for you in the store. Kornli looked at himself in the mirror. The 3-piece tailcoat with a semi-tall silk top hat indeed suited him well. Since he had grown taller, none of his old clothes fit anymore, and as a formal member of the team, he definitely needed a new outfit. All right then, please custom make an additional brand new tailcoat for me, in a different color. I also need a hunting suit and a matching hat, 5 white shirts, and a pair of sufficiently sturdy hunting boots. Your decision is very wise. I guarantee all your new clothes will be in the latest styles. Owner Backlund rubbed his hands eagerly. Is that all, dear sir? That's all, Kornli nodded. 2 formal suits, 8 gold sol and 15 sol each, for a total of 17 gold sol and 10 sol. The hunting suit and matching hat will be 18 sol. Each men's white shirt is 2 sol, totaling 10 sol. Hunting boots are 1 gold sol and 10 sol. Backlund quickly calculated on paper, that's a total of 20 gold sol and 8 sol. Kornli pulled out his wallet from his embrace, opened it, and took out 5 1 gold sol notes, 1 5 sol note, and 3 1 sol notes, handing them to owner Backlund. This is the deposit. I will pay the remaining 15 gold sol when I pick up the clothes. During his time as a civilian staff member, his weekly salary was 3 gold sol and 5 sol. Although he had some savings, the payment he just made had used up 2/3 of his savings. It seemed he would need to ask Captain Dunn for an advance on his future weekly salary. Captain Dunn was reasonable and would surely agree to this simple request. Of course, please take care, sir. Backlund bowed all the way as he escorted Kornli out the door. To receive such a large order right after opening was surely the goddess's favor. Kornli bought a sausage sandwich for breakfast with 4 1-penny coins at Rogier's Bakery, on the street corner. He ate as he walked, and just as he reached the corner, he saw the Blackthorn Security Company's 2-wheeled carriage speeding out. Captain Dunn and Leonard sat opposite each other in the carriage, their expressions serious. What happened? Kornli pursed his lips and entered the Blackthorn Security Company's 2nd-floor office, greeting Roseanne, who was dozing in her chair. Oh my, you've grown taller and become more handsome. Roseanne looked at Kornli in surprise. What happened? I consumed the potion last night and have become a formal team member, Kornli smiled. I can go on missions with the team now. You've also taken that step. Roseanne frowned slightly. Becoming a Beyander is an extremely dangerous thing. This way I can protect you better. Kornli walked over and ruffled Roseanne's long brown hair. Roseanne pouted in dissatisfaction. You're bullying me again. I just saw Captain Dunn and Leonard leave in the carriage, Kornli asked. It's a case sent by the police station. Let me look at the report that just arrived. Roseanne picked up the newly arrived report from the desk, turned to the 2nd page, and read it carefully. The victims are Welch McGovern and Naya. The wheels of fate began to turn. Kornli still remembered this as the first case, and at the same time, Klein also arrived in this world. I really hope I get a chance to meet this fellow countryman first. 2 lives lost, what happened? Kornli asked. It's not written in the report. You can ask the captain when he returns, Roseanne said. You are now qualified to know about and handle cases, not just learn the details from reports like before. It seems I have some free time. Has old Neil arrived? I remember he's always the first one here every day. He entered the office 15 minutes ago. Old people sleep much less than we do, Roseanne yawned. When I'm resting, I wish I could spend 16 hours a day in bed. I'll go find him. Kornli skillfully picked up a few reimbursement forms from the table and went to old Neil's office. It seems you're adapting well. Old Neil pushed the hand grinder coffee maker and the intricately patterned silver inlaid pewter pot on the table towards him. The basic course might take an hour or 2. You can drink coffee while listening to the lecture. Spirit body, astral body, mind body, ether body, old Neil spoke eloquently, confidently explaining all the knowledge Kornli needed to master. Although Kornli was already familiar with this knowledge, he still listened to old Neil's explanation in detail to avoid arousing old Neil's suspicion. Now, practice your spirit vision ability. This is one of the most used abilities in combat for us, for you. He activated his spirit vision, as old Neil instructed, and turned his gaze towards old Neil, suddenly noticing a pair of cold, emotionless eyes with no warmth behind him. Upon seeing his gaze, they slowly turned and stared intently at him and old Neil. Although he was mentally prepared, when Kornli truly witnessed this scene, the fear in his heart still burst out. Eyes, a pair of eyes. Hey, it's nothing. That's just a manifestation of a ritual. Old Neil nonchalantly rubbed his left thumb and forefinger, and the eyes behind him gradually disappeared. Well, there's one last thing you need to know. The rest of the time is yours. Old Neil drank the last sip of coffee from his cup. Daily meditation can help you better connect the potion with your spirit. Of course, as a combatant, you also need your own weapon. Kornli pulled out the reimbursement forms from his in my arms. I'll always remember the first lesson you taught me. You are a qualified clerical worker. Old Neil sighed. You've completely inherited all my advantages. I should go find them. Kornli stood up. Thank you. Damn it, what happened? Corpse collector, Fry stood up, looking at Kornli's height in surprise. Give us back our Kornli, you handsome monster. You still owe me 2 sol and 4 pence from playing cards the day before yesterday. Kornli took off his hat. I haven't forgotten. I'm sure this guy in front of me is Kornli, but I don't understand why you grew taller overnight and became so handsome. Fry sat down dejectedly. I thought you might have also conveniently lost the memories of these past few days as you grew taller. Sleepless, Luo Yao looked gently at Kornli. What happened? I've signed the contract and become a formal team member. I took a marauder potion that I acquired yesterday, and I've grown a bit taller. Kornli sat down opposite Fry. Welcome aboard. Luo Yao reached out and shook Kornli's hand. The captain just went out. I believe he'll be back soon. Zhiga Tiang is guarding the Chinese gate downstairs for him. The potion you took is called Marauder. What abilities does it give you? Luo Yao asked. Literal abilities. Kornli flipped his right hand, and a small golden coin purse appeared in his palm. He tossed it to Luo Yao. Just testing my ability, I didn't look inside. Good thing you didn't look, otherwise I would definitely silence you. Luo Yao took the coin purse, blushing. It doesn't just contain loose change. What else would be in a lady's coin purse besides loose change? Kornli awkwardly scratched his nose. Fry burst out laughing, walked over, and patted Kornli's shoulder. You almost became the most miserable newly advanced Beander in the team. Being targeted by Luo Yao isn't a lucky thing. I'll have Roseanne deduct the 4 sol you owe me directly from your weekly salary and give it to me. Luo Yao grabbed the quill from the table and threw it at Fry. Fry easily dodged, and the tip of the quill stuck into the door, startling Leonard Mitchell, who had just come in from outside. Following him, Captain Dunn Smith decisively stopped, watching Leonard perform a graceful dance step and slide into the office. You're all here. I believe Kornli has already told you about his decision to become a member of the team. Dunn hung his hat and coat on the coat rack by the door. Leonard, please introduce the details of the recent case to everyone. Welcome to the Nighthawks team, Kornli. Leonard took off his hat and flicked it gently towards the coat rack. The hat arced gracefully through the air, brushed against the coat rack, and fell to the floor. Damn it, it's off again. The 2 deceased are Welch McGregor and Naya. They died in Welch's home. Welch's head showed multiple signs of impact against the wall, clearly evidenced by the bloodstains on the wall. Miss Naya's cause of death was very strange. She was kneeling on a stool, her head submerged in a wash basin, and the cause of death was drowning, Leonard said, his expression returning to normal, in a regular tone. Drowning, Fry mused, so, this was a suicide case. Was it a lover's suicide? If the 2 were lovers and committed suicide due to family opposition, that would be a reason. However, according to the statement from Welch's father, the banker Mr. McGregor, the two were simply classmates and were recently studying a family notebook of Antigonus from the Fourth Epoch. They were accompanied by another person named Klein Moretti, also their classmate. The three of them formed a study group, Leonard said. Our initial suspicion is that Klein Moretti, a recent history graduate from Hoi University, is involved. The Antigonus notebook, which is important to the case, is also missing. A very reasonable suspicion, but it certainly wasn't the work of our future fool. Kornli, I'm not yet clear on the abilities of your marauder potion. It's time to show everyone so I know how you should coordinate with the team's actions. Kornli looked around and lightly tapped his right foot on the ground. Everyone only saw a black blur flash before them. Kornli, using only 2 fingers of his right hand, pressed against the narrow upper edge of the window, performing a handstand in the air at a height of less than a meter. His feet were level with the ground, and his entire body floated steadily in the air like a set square. Agile as a monkey. Leonard clapped his hands in approval. You're the monkey, your whole family are monkeys. Kornli tapped with his right hand, gently landed steadily on the floor, and placed his right hand on his chest, performing an exaggerated bow to everyone, earning unanimous praise. Besides that, my ears can hear faint sounds, I walk almost silently, and it's easy to steal items from others. My marksmanship is decent, I can hit 9 rings out of 10 shots. I also received fencing training and learned close quarters combat techniques during my training, Kornli said. We'll depart in half an hour, Dunn said. I've arranged for a police officer to wait downstairs at Mr. Klein's residence an hour from now. It takes 25 minutes by carriage to get there. Captain, if it's just a simple inquiry procedure, can I join this mission? Kornli asked. All right. He agreed so quickly. Kornli had prepared over a dozen reasons in his mind, but none of them were used, which made him feel a little disappointed. What do I need to prepare? Self-defense weapons, or? Kornli asked. This is just a simple case inquiry process. If that notebook can be found in his home, this graduate named Klein Moretti would indeed be a suspect, but from what we understand, he is not a Beander, at least not before the day before yesterday. You don't need to be nervous. Captain Dunn looked at Leonard. We'll use the police station's 4-person carriage to go. I can drive. Kornli volunteered, raising his hand. Since we are going in the capacity of the police, Fry, lend Kornli your police uniform. Also, the driving will be handled by Mr. Brett. Dunn smiled. It's unreasonable for a detective to drive for 2 detectives of the same rank. In cases involving ordinary people, the Nighthawks team needs to avoid attracting attention. Kornli nodded silently. Captain Dunn had thought of everything in great detail. All right, Captain. Fry stood up and took out a complete detective uniform from the team's personal wardrobe. 2 silver stars on the shoulders sparkled brightly. Try not to wrinkle it. Fry watched as Kornli emerged from the inner room, dressed in a detective uniform. His almost perfect physique combined with the crisp uniform made everyone's eyes light up, and Fry couldn't help but say enviously. Don't worry, when we get back, I believe old Neil will prepare a set for you too. Luo Yao walked over and helped Kornli straighten his slightly crooked collar. Very handsome. Let's go. Dunn took out his pocket watch and checked the time. The 3 of them went downstairs and boarded the waiting carriage. Brett watched Kornli approach in his police uniform, smiled, and bumped his right fist, gloved in black, against Kornli's. Congratulations on your promotion, Detective Kornli. The 3 of them successively got into the carriage and sat facing each other. Brett gave a soft command, and the carriage slowly drove out of Blackthorn Security Company, turned right onto the road, and gradually picked up speed. Captain, what do I need to pay attention to? Kornli asked cautiously. Observe. Dunn closed his eyes. And trust your intuition. Intuition. Yes, you are already a Beander. Intuition is very important in some situations, so important that you can rely on it to find clues that others cannot notice, and then find the true culprit of the case. Leonard took out a poetry collection from his pocket and said casually while reading. Kornli was deep in thought. The carriage stopped at the intersection of Iron Cross Street. The residents here were mostly artisans who worked in nearby factories or at home. Most of the rooms were one-bedroom or two-bedroom, with the kitchen doubling as a dining room right at the entrance, a washroom next to it, and one or two bedrooms further inside. The ventilation was good, but once winter arrived in Tingen City, the poorly insulated houses would quickly lose heat, forcing residents to work wrapped in double blankets. Our fool lives here. Good morning, detectives. A police officer with thick eyebrows and large eyes walked over and saluted the three. I am Officer Mountbatten, responsible for the security of the apartments on this street. The person you were looking for is in the second room on the second floor. Please lead the way, Officer Mountbatten. Captain Dunn said quietly. Please let us lead the conversation later. He casually handed the black cane in his hand to Kornli. Kornli took it, feeling a slight weight in his right hand. The handle of the cane was silver-plated, perfectly suiting the habits of a middle-aged nobleman. At the bottom, there was a slightly worn brass tip, making it exceptionally stable when inserted into the gravel ground. The cane is for your self-defense, Captain Dunn said in a low voice. The captain always thought of everything. Thank you, Captain. Kornli replied equally quietly. Mountbatten led the three up the stairs and knocked on Klein's door 3 times with his fist. Open up. Who is it? A low male voice came from inside. It's me, Mountbatten, Officer Zhi Chi Mountbatten. Mountbatten said loudly. All right, I'll be right there. The three exchanged glances. Based on Klein's behavior, he didn't seem like a suspect at all. The door opened, and a man in a black waistcoat and linen shirt stood ramrod straight, scrutinizing the visitors. His eyes were filled with confusion and bewilderment, as if he had no idea what error he had committed. These 3 detectives are looking for you. Mountbatten pushed the door open and stepped inside, looking around at the furnishings of the house. Benson is at work, and my sister Melissa is at school. Klein replied. What can I help you with, detectives? Do you know Mr. Welch and Ms. Naya? Leonard asked. While Leonard questioned Klein, he carefully observed Klein's facial expressions. The latter's expressions of frustration and confusion seemed entirely genuine, not at all feigned. It seems there's nothing for me to do here. Kornli glanced inside. The bedroom on the left was slightly larger than the one on the right. Against the inner side of the door was a bunk bed, and facing the window was a slightly worn desk. 2 corners of the desk were uneven, and several thick books and notebooks were propped under the desk legs, maintaining a precarious balance. The fool's first home really looked dilapidated. He walked into the room and casually picked up the open notebook on the desk. This was the last notebook the original owner had before his death, and also the one Klein was currently reading. Turning to the last page, a striking line of text caught his eye. Everyone will die, including me. This was the hint the Antigonus notebook gave Klein. How terrifying. What a strange thing. Kornli turned to Klein. Everyone will die, including me, what does that mean? Everyone looked up at Klein. Kornli stared intently at Klein's expression. If he had already been affected by this notebook, there should be some signs. I don't know, I really don't know. After waking up this morning, I felt something was off with me, as if I had forgotten some things, especially parts of what happened in the last few days. I even don't know why I wrote such a sentence. Klein clutched his head in pain. You're using such a clumsy excuse as forgetting your memory. Do you take us for fools? Mountbatten said, flaring up in anger. It's true. Klein spread his hands and looked at everyone with a frank gaze. This might be true. Dunn slowly spoke, glancing at Leonard, signaling the latter to continue questioning. Forgetting is also a good memory protection measure. It seems that the transmigrated Klein was not too much affected by the original owner's memories. Leonard continued to ask several questions. From Klein's expression, it didn't seem like he was faking it. Leonard seemed to believe that Klein's memories of the past few days had indeed been lost. A specialist will be coming in the next 2 days. She should be able to determine if your memory is truly lost. Dunn said. Today's inquiry ends here. Dunn turned and led the 3 out of the room. You'll protect me, right? Klein's shouts came from the staircase. Kornli suppressed a laugh and followed behind Leonard. The three said goodbye to Officer Mountbatten and returned to the carriage. Dunn looked at Kornli. Kornli, what did your intuition tell you? I don't think Klein Moretti is suspicious, but he is the only one alive at the scene. As for who the murderer is, Kornli scratched his head. His handwriting in the notebook shows that his memory or actions seem to have been manipulated by something. I think the other party's suspicion is very low. Leonard looked up at Kornli. Your suspicion is very reasonable. Kornli, are you sure this is your first time at the scene? Your performance is very good. Dunn took the cane Kornli handed him. Since that's the case, we'll come back tonight. His suspicion, in my opinion, is indeed very small. Leonard looked at Captain Dunn without surprise. Has Mrs. Daly arrived in Tingen City? She will arrive in Tingen in 2 hours. Dunn tapped the carriage floor with his cane. Mr. Brett, let's go back. The carriage slowly started, driving slowly towards the Blackthorn Security Company. What weapons are marauders good at? You can mention anything. Dunn brought Kornli back to his office and smiled as he watched Kornli pull out 2 familiar reimbursement application forms from his Y. Old Neil was right, you are indeed the most talented clerical staff. Pistol, holster, dagger, hand crossbow. Dunn took the reimbursement application form and looked at the handwriting on it. A pistol is a very practical weapon, but a hand crossbow. The flight speed of a crossbow bolt is not as fast as a bullet. Kornli also didn't want to use crossbow bolts, but there was no silencer on pistols in this era. If he encountered a guard he wanted to assassinate, this thing would be much more effective than an ordinary pistol. A hand crossbow is useful for ordinary people. If possible, I would rather use this weapon to kill enemies from a distance than go up and fight them head-on. After all, I haven't fully mastered close combat techniques. If it's a one-on-one fight, I can handle it, but once there are more than 2 people, I, without experience, might encounter some problems, Kornli explained. Also, I need to apply for an advance on several weeks of my weekly salary to buy clothes. Kornli stood up helplessly. My increased height has rendered all my previous clothes useless. This set is newly bought, and with related clothes, it has already cost me most of my savings. Dunn looked Kornli up and down, nodded, stamped the reimbursement application form, then took another form, quickly wrote a few strokes on it, and finally pressed his own seal. You know Mrs. Oriana's office. Go and get an advance on 4 weeks of your weekly salary. After that, half will be deducted from your £6 weekly salary each week. Also, apply for 30 ordinary bullets and 10 demon-breaking bullets. Although you have passed basic firearm training, good shooters are all fed by bullets, and bullets are not expensive. A raise, that's really good. Captain. Kornli nodded and walked out of Dunn's office, heading straight for Old Neil's room. I knew you'd come back. Old Neil smiled as he looked at the reimbursement form. Come with me to the armory. Today, Mrs. Oriana was guarding the armory. She watched Old Neil lead Kornli to the armory door, smiled, and winked her left eye at Kornli. I heard you've become a brave Beander. What a courageous young man. Unlike this young man, I'd rather read documents every day than embark on that dangerous path again. Old Neil sighed as he signed the registration form at the door. Spending the rest of your life with your wife is a luxury for Beyonders, old man. Mrs. Oriana took the registration form and pressed a button under the table with her hand. May the goddess be with you, dear Kornli. Come to my room later to get your advanced weekly salary. Praise the goddess. Kornli drew the shape representing the crimson moon on his chest, smiled, nodded to Mrs. Oriana, and followed Old Neil into the armory. Pistol, Old Neil picked and chose on the wall, finally taking out a black revolver with a slightly larger grip and stuffing it into Kornli's hand. Take it. This revolver is the best weapon I've ever used. I call it Despair. The cylinder can hold 7 bullets. Although it's 200 grams heavier than a normal revolver, I'm sure you know what it means to have one more usable bullet than others in a fight. These 2 daggers were found on those thieves yesterday, made entirely of fine steel, and there's also a belt. Kornli's hand now held a thick pure leather belt, with a small dagger inserted on each side of the central buckle. Kornli pulled one out. The dagger blade was coated with black paint and completely non-reflective. He swung it a few times in the air, tossed it up, and caught the blade with his right index finger, maintaining a delicate balance. Very good. Only a professional marauder knows what kind of weapon he should use, Kornli praised. Finally, here's the hand crossbow you wanted. Old Neil pulled open the drawer of a cabinet by the wall, took out a delicate hand crossbow, turned around, pulled up Kornli's sleeve, carefully tied the hand crossbow to his forearm, and tied the thin string on the hand crossbow's pull ring to Kornli's ring finger. It can fire one crossbow bolt at a time, with a carrying capacity of 8 bolts. Remember to try to retrieve them. If you lose any, you need to tell me in advance, as I need to customize the crossbow bolts for you, Old Neil said. I know a good blacksmith. Each customization costs 50 coins, so try to conserve them. Oh, right, and bullets. 30 ordinary bullets, a spare cylinder, 10 demon-breaking bullets, an all-weapon usage permit, a police intern detective badge, a 7th Squad official member badge, and a set of well-fitting detective uniform and hat were neatly placed in front of Kornli. His hands quickly put these items on, tucking despair into the holster under his left armpit, and picking up the neatly folded intern detective clothing. That's all for now. What else do you want? Old Neil crossed his arms and looked at Kornli. How about a high-pressure steam rifle and 100 bullets? Kornli smiled. He had once seen in a report that the machinery hivemind team of the Church of the God of Steam and Machinery had used this weapon in a battle. Although he hadn't seen the battle scene, every man would like this kind of romance that only belongs to machinery. After all fear comes from insufficient firepower. We are not the Church of the God of Steam and Machinery. Old Neil rolled his eyes. This thing is also a special offensive weapon that only the captain of the machinery hivemind team can apply for over there. I thought you had overcome your fear of death the moment you signed the contract and became an official member. I believe that only by ensuring my own safety will the team members not expose weaknesses in combat by being distracted trying to take care of me, Kornli said. Before I become a senior member, I will use all my strength to ensure my own safety first. I'm just a coward, although I won't say it directly. Old Neil nodded. Kornli's approach was very consistent with his usual style. So, I really need some things you can make, for example. Kornli leaned close to Old Neil's ear and said a few words. Marauder's ideas are indeed unique. We never thought of using these things. Come with me to the alchemy room. Old Neil nodded thoughtfully. Everything you want is there. The two came to the alchemy room. Old Neil took several dark brown bottles from the shelf, found a clean wide-mouthed bottle, mixed several different colored solutions inside, divided them into 2 portions, and then carefully drew 3 drops of liquid with a pipette from a small black bottle, putting them into the bottle on the right. A burst of blue-black smoke emerged from the mixed liquid in the bottle. Old Neil quickly covered his nose with his sleeve and swiftly capped the bottle. Kornli stared intently as the liquid in the bottle turned from black to light green, and finally to a blue-green viscous liquid. Black abyss demon fish blood, corpse putrefaction fluid, raven's blood, plus a tiny bit of black widow spider venom. Once it hits, it's enough to kill an ordinary person. Even the bottle on the left, without spider venom, as long as it makes a small cut, it's enough to paralyze someone for at least 3 minutes. Old Neil handed the 2 bottles to Kornli. I believe that you, being so careful, will definitely need some charms to sleep at night, but you can't make them now. Kornli nodded affirmatively. Sigh. Old Neil pinched his chin, his gaze falling on the belt in Kornli's hand. Give me the belt, I'll figure something out. Old Neil extended his right hand. Who told you you're my favorite clerical staff? An hour later, Kornli walked out of Old Neil's office with a full harvest and successfully received his 24 gold pounds weekly salary from Mrs. Oriana. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. And please support the author by link in description. 2 buckles were added to the left side of his belt, holding small vials of poison made by Old Neil. If needed in combat, he only had to dab the arrowhead of the crossbow on the back of his left hand into the bottle. To prevent the poison from splashing onto his hand, Old Neil also prepared a single-hand leather glove for him. 3 belt buckles were added to the back of his belt, each holding 2 official Nighthawk's charms, 1 drowsiness amulet, similar in effect to Dunn Smith and Leonard Mitchell's calming and sleep-inducing chants, 1 soul-soothing charm, which could pacify ghosts, specters, zombies, and water ghouls, and to a certain extent deal with wraiths and evil spirits, and 1 dream charm, which could help the caster enter the target's dream. If you are on a mission with others, the last one will not be of much help to you. If you have time recently, you should also come to learn Hermes, Ancient Hermes, Giant Dragon language, and Elvish. We also have some relevant documents for these nearly lost languages. As a team member, you can freely take and read them. The library is also where you should go most often, Old Neil finally exhorted. If you also want to learn how to make charms, then your schedule will be very full for a while. Kornli walked out of the room and came to the team's office. Luo Yao and Fry were divining with tarot cards. Seeing Kornli walk in wearing a glove on his left hand, Luo Yao joked, "Is this Old Neil's latest fashion trend?" Kornli revealed the hand crossbow on his left hand to show them. Both of them showed approving gazes. As expected of a marauder, his ideas are indeed different from ours. A few hours later, it was time for lunch. Dunn walked out of the office and took a 10-soul bento box from a bag. "Captain, can I join the activity tonight?" Kornli proactively raised his hand. "I can drive, so Mr. Brett won't be bothered. The original owner of the body was very good at driving carriages." Leonard smiled. "I appreciate your positive attitude, Captain. I request that Kornli replace me so that I have time tonight to enjoy the latest opera, The Ancient Castle on the Cliff. I just want to quickly catch up with everyone's pace and not become a burden to the team," Kornli said. "Besides, tonight's mission is just driving and accompanying. I don't think there's any danger with Captain present. Even if there is danger, I can protect myself and won't distract Captain." He pulled open his clothes, revealing the despair under his left armpit. "Tonight is indeed just a simple accompanying mission," Dunn said. "In that case, Leonard, you will be responsible for guarding the Chinese gate tonight, and Kornli will accompany me." "Oh, no," Leonard looked at Captain Dunn walking out of the office with a face full of despair. "My opera. As far as I know, the public screening of The Ancient Castle on the Cliff has just begun. You have at least a month to watch it," Luo Yao smiled. "As the most senior team member after the captain, at least one person needs to be on duty in the team. Since no one has anything to do, how about a game of fighting evil? 4 people. Fry eagerly invited. "You 3 play." Kornli picked up the Hermes document he had just gotten from Old Neil and walked to a table in the corner. "I'm going to learn Hermes." "So serious. You should know that knowledge isn't built in a day." Luo Yao skillfully shuffled and cut the cards with both hands, like a professional dealer. "My shriveled purse doesn't allow me to participate in any entertainment activities costing more than 1 soul, Kornli sighed. "At least not for now. After getting his clothes tomorrow, his newly acquired 24 gold soul would shrink directly to 9 gold soul. Adding the remaining money in his pocket, his total assets would only be 13 gold soul and 5 soul, plus a few 1 soul coins." Kornli spent the afternoon diligently studying. Half of the coffee powder on the table was gone. He felt that under the stimulation of the Marauder potion, he seemed to be gradually transferring the knowledge from the book into his mind. In one afternoon, he had mastered about 70 to 80% of Hermes and Ancient Hermes. He could also guess the final conclusions of those originally obscure Hermes documents based on context. It was truly interesting. Luo Yao, as Kornli expected, skillfully robbed the purses of the other 2. Whether they were landlords or commoners, she could smoothly complete her task. A pair of 6s, only 2 cards left. Luo Yao smiled as she looked at Fry and Leonard, whose faces were darker than midnight. She lightly tossed out 2 small 3s and effortlessly collected the 12 soul on the table in front of her. That's enough for today, gentlemen. Luo Yao glanced at the wall clock on the table. It's almost dinner time. Fry had an additional 3 sol and 6 sol in debt, while Leonard had given away 2 sol and 12 sol, slightly better than Fry. Oh, no, Fry clutched his head in pain. Leonard remained silent, his eyes fixed on Luo Yao as she stuffed the coins and banknotes into her bulging purse. It was a pleasure playing cards with you, gentlemen. Luo Yao fanned the playing cards in her hand. Feel free to come find me for a rematch anytime. After eating the 10 sol dinner bento, Leonard went downstairs to relieve Sika Tian, who was already guarding the Chinese gate. Everyone else went home, leaving Kornli alone, still diligently studying under the gas lamp. Around 11 o'clock, Dunn walked in from the adjacent office. It's time. I'll drive. Kornli leapt up from the table, tidied his documents, ran downstairs, and found a 2-person carriage. The carriage's crossed swords, crowns surrounded, emblems sparkled in the moonlight. Kornli skillfully drove the single-horse carriage and parked it next to the streetlight on Iron Cross Street. Dunn stepped down from the carriage, his eyes fixed on a room on the 2nd floor, and reached up to press down his hat brim. Kornli felt a peaceful power emanating from Dunn, radiating towards the distant apartment. His own head also felt a dizzy spell. He knew this was Captain's area of effect dream entering power. He pinched his thigh hard with his right hand to stay awake. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Kornli sat quietly in the carriage, activating his spirit vision, and constantly scanning the surroundings with his eyes, wary of the environment. I'll go get him, Dunn suddenly said, putting his right hand in his pocket and walking towards the opposite side. 15 minutes later, Dunn walked down the stairs with Klein. The latter was wearing a somewhat cheap-looking tailcoat and an unfashionable top hat, following Dunn's steps down the apartment stairs with light footfalls. A gentle night breeze carried their conversation to Kornli's ears. What if I had run away then? Perhaps you could have run half a street at most, but you would still have been caught by us in the end. That would only increase your suspicion, which isn't a good choice, and, Dunn continued walking towards the carriage without a pause, you wouldn't think I came alone, would you? Klein glanced at the coachman's position. Kornli smiled and nodded at him. Good night, fool. Klein dejectedly followed Dunn into the carriage, and Dunn closed the carriage door behind him. From the corner of his eye, Kornli caught sight of a blurry black silhouette hidden under a tree, seemingly observing them. When his gaze turned in that direction, the human-like outline subtly shrank, perfectly blending with the tree. Is someone following us? That's impossible. Who would dare to follow the captain of the Nighthawks team and an official member alone? Although I haven't officially fought yet, I am still a Beander. Then, the only possibility is that they are following Klein. Or do they want to find that Antigona's family notebook? The carriage wheels made a slight creaking sound on the stony ground as it headed towards Welch's house. He subtly glanced back with the corner of his eye. The man had not followed, seemingly deterred by the markings on the carriage. Kornli had the carriage travel at a moderate speed, his ears fully attuned to the conversation between the two inside the carriage. The captain and Klein talked a lot. It seemed Captain Dunn had completely treated Klein as an innocent person who had stumbled into something dangerous. Welch's house was not too far from Klein's residence, taking less than 15 minutes to reach. Captain, we've arrived, Kornli said. Come in with us. Ms. Daly should be happy to see you, Dunn said, stepping out of the carriage first and waiting for Klein by the roadside. All right. Kornli jumped down from the coachman's seat and followed the two men on foot into the front yard of Welch's residence. This small garden was very quietly arranged, with a garden on the left and a lawn on the right. The faint scent of flowers combined with the fresh smell of grass, making Kornli involuntarily take a couple more deep breaths of the cool night air. How many mosquitoes must there be in this house every day? As soon as he stepped in, Klein couldn't help but stop. A chilling sensation came from behind him, making him shiver. Kornli's right hand was already on the soul-soothing charm waist buckle, slowly opening it. He didn't know what situation lay ahead, but he trusted Dunn's ability and didn't rashly throw out the charm. Don't worry about it, Dunn slightly tilted his head to look at Kornli, a faint smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. A very alert reaction. Old Neil taught him well. "Come in, gentlemen," an ethereal voice came from inside the room. "The door is unlocked." Dunn was the first to twist the doorknob and step into the living room. "Any results, Daly?" Miss Daly, wearing blue blush and eyeshadow, was lazily half reclining on the sofa. She wore a black hooded robe, and a silver chain with a white crystal pendant was wrapped around her exposed wrist. A long white candle burned on the small round table in front of her. "The original spirits are all gone, including Welch's and Naya's." "Good evening, Kornli, you seem different from before." "He has become an official member of the Nighthawks team," Dunn said, sitting down nearby. "Although it's only his first day, he has already started taking on missions." "Welcome to the team, Kornli." Ms. Daly winked her left eye at him and pointed to the sofa beside her, gesturing for him to sit down. "Good evening, madam." Klein bowed slightly to Ms. Daly and sat opposite her as instructed by Ms. Daly. "Don't worry, this is a very simple thing. You won't have any uncomfortable reactions." Ms. Daly smiled and straightened up. "Since you are ready, let's begin." Kornli watched as Ms. Daly hypnotized Klein. He fell into a dazed sleep on the sofa and was woken up by Daly a few minutes later. "I'm sorry," Ms. Daly smiled, looking at Captain Dunn, her eyes full of feminine tenderness. No trace of that Antigonus notebook was found in his memory. It's not in his house, and his memory offers no clues either. "It's truly a headache," Dunn shook his head. "In that case, I won't disturb your rest." "I was just about to rest myself," Daly said, covering her mouth with her hand in a feigned yawn, a look of regret on her face. "Miss Daly," Kornli stood up, lightly touching his hat brim in farewell. Following the previous route, Kornli first dropped Klein off at home. When only he and Dunn were left, he turned his head and poked it through the small window connecting the front and back of the carriage. "Captain, I've discovered something suspicious." "You mean someone was following Klein near his house?" Dunn frowned. "That's a significant discovery. Maybe I was mistaken. After all, it was just a silhouette. It could also have been a local resident looking for a cat. You never know." Kornli spread his hands. "I hope I'm wrong. When solving cases, no clue can be overlooked." "Your discovery is very useful." Dunn took out a golden pocket watch and checked the time. It was already 1 o'clock in the deep night. The Iron Cross Street police station is just up the street, 5 minutes away. Kornli stopped the carriage at the police station entrance and followed the captain inside. The two showed their badges to the drowsy receptionist at the door. Officer Mountbatten happened to be the night duty officer tonight. Upon seeing the two enter the office, he immediately stood up and saluted. "How may I help you, esteemed detectives?" "I need the night patrol carriage to patrol continuously, day and night, near Klein Moretti's house on Iron Cross Street, for at least 2 nights, Dunn said. "Execute this." "Yes, detective, sir." Officer Mountbatten scurried out of the police station, driving the carriage quickly to inform the patrol officers on the street. "Do you need me to join them for the surveillance mission tonight, Captain?" Kornli asked. "I can find a quiet place to monitor without affecting the office's normal patrol." Dunn shook his head. "Our activities today have been frequent enough. You have work and study tasks tomorrow and need sufficient sleep. If the person you saw intended to find that lost Antigonus family notebook, he must have already discovered our presence. The fact that he didn't act rashly in front of the two of us and an ordinary person proves that even if he is a Beander, his sequence can only be sequence 9, at most sequence 8. I deliberately did not confiscate the revolver in Klein's hand. Even ordinary bullets still have enough lethality against them. You also heard that Klein Moretti is very interested in the clerical work I offered him in the team. We also happen to need history students who possess sufficient knowledge. If he agrees, we will have an additional qualified clerical worker and an excellent team member. Let's go back and rest." Kornli watched Dunn walk towards the carriage, then returned to the coachman's seat, driving the carriage back to the Blackthorn Security Company. "Captain, you think it's fine, but this is the biggest support in this world, and I will cling to it tightly." From any angle, I cannot let Klein get into trouble. He walked out of the team's station and hailed a private carriage. Where to, sir? The coachman asked eagerly. Iron Cross Street intersection, please hurry. Kornli stepped onto the carriage in one swift motion. I'm in a hurry. Don't worry, my skills are excellent. The coachman grinned and drove Kornli back to Iron Cross Street as fast as possible, then held out his hand to Kornli for a soul for the fare. Midnight fares are always this price, dear sir, the coachman explained, seeing Kornli's slightly displeased expression. Dark, truly dark. Kornli's face was ashen as he watched the police patrol vehicles slowly circle Iron Cross Street as instructed by the captain. He found a large tree and hid his body within its canopy. Damn it, why are there so many cursed mosquitoes? Kornli, you look like you didn't sleep a wink last night. Luo Yao watched Kornli's head nod down little by little as he read the documents, just like a woodpecker on an old grandfather clock that came out to tell the time. Last night, to find the figure who was following Klein Moretti, I guarded outside his house all night and only slept for 3 hours until dawn before coming back to work, and I was drained of blood by hundreds of mosquitoes. Kornli yawned, I'm so sleepy, I need an even stronger cup of coffee. No, you need sleep. Luo Yao gently pushed away Kornli's hand reaching for the coffee can. Becoming a Beander doesn't mean you have to abandon sleep, which is a human instinct. Old Neil is off today, you can take a nap on the sofa in his office, and if you still need to be on duty, I have mosquito repellent in my drawer. I'm going now, no need to prepare my lunch. Kornli stood up and left the office. Kornli, that guy, is like a changed man. He used to love playing cards with us. Leonard held a copy of selected poems of Rosal in his hand and glanced in the direction Kornli had left. After sleeping for most of the day on the sofa in old Neil's room, Kornli woke up at 4 in the afternoon. After waiting 2 hours and having dinner, he took the mosquito repellent from Luo Yao's desk, applied a thick layer, and then returned to Iron Cross Street. This time he took a hired carriage. The place he was looking for was the same as last night, the dense canopy of another large tree, about 40 meters from Klein's bedroom. If he stayed completely still, he would be completely invisible from the outside. He slipped into the bushes and sat in the same spot as last night, his eyes vigilantly watching his surroundings through the leaves. The position is well chosen. The leaves rustled, and Dunn slipped in, sitting leisurely on a branch opposite him, but the scent of the mosquito repellent you applied before coming is a bit too obvious for a Beander. Old Neil has a better formula. Sorry, Captain, I'll pay attention next time. Kornli scratched his head, do you suspect that guy will come today? Uncertain, but it doesn't hurt us to spend some time. Dunn said concisely, we can take turns monitoring, 1 hour on, 1 hour off. You've been very tired lately, so rest first. Captain. Kornli looked at the captain's firm gaze and knew that further words would not sway his opinion. Okay. As night deepened, moonlight enveloped Iron Cross Street, emitting a charming crimson glow. Dunn sat patiently on the tree branch, his eyes slightly narrowed. A figure emerged from behind a large tree 50 meters away and slowly ascended the stairs to the second floor. He reached out and covered Kornli's mouth. The latter, startled, opened his eyes and, seeing Dunn's gaze, followed it to the second-floor window. The person cautiously opened Klein's bedroom window, turned sideways, extended his right leg, and climbed in, followed by his left leg. He then carefully rummaged through books and Klein's diary on the desk in front of the window. This guy actually dared to commit a crime amidst the dense police patrols outside. It seems he is determined to get Antigonus's notes. Kornli slightly raised his head towards Dunn and tilted his head towards the room, signaling whether they should go in now. Dunn pointed to himself with his right hand, then to the window, then to Kornli, then pointed to the back door on the second floor, and then to his left wrist. Kornli nodded knowingly. This meant to use a crossbow to stun him, leaving him alive for interrogation. The two quietly jumped down from the tree. Kornli, following the captain's instructions, hid by the door. Soon after, he watched Klein raise his revolver, forcing the intruder out of his residence, and immediately raised his left hand to aim. Puff! A crossbow bolt accurately struck the intruder's neck. The latter stumbled 2 steps on the ground, his legs went numb, and he collapsed. Kornli pulled the belt from his waist and tied him up securely. I brought handcuffs. Dunn walked over and tossed the handcuffs to Kornli, so the intruder now had a shiny pair of handcuffs on his wrists. Klein Moretti, this is Mr. Kornli White, a member of the Nighthawks team. Kornli, this is Klein Moretti, a civilian staff member of the Nighthawks team. Kornli stood up and extended his right hand to Klein, and their right hands clasped together. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Klein Moretti. Mr. Kornli White. It seems this guy was also looking for the Antigonus family's notes, but he didn't know that the notes were not in your hands at all. Dunn glanced at the still unconscious prisoner and said to Klein, I just used the power of nightmare to send your family back to sleep. They don't know what happened. You should thank Mr. Kornli White. It was he who discovered this guy 2 days ago and staked out your door for 2 nights, which gave us the opportunity to catch him. Thank you again, Mr. Kornli White. Klein nodded slightly to Kornli. You're welcome, colleague. Kornli showed a mouthful of white teeth. All for the future fool. Good night, Captain, Mr. Kornli. Klein, still shaken, carefully held the pistol in his hand, nodded goodbye to the two, and turned to walk towards the iron staircase. The prisoner groaned, seemingly showing signs of waking. Without waiting for Dunn's command, Kornli stepped forward, squatted down, and delivered a fierce right punch directly to the opponent's face. The prisoner passed out again without a sound. Your fighting skills are very good. Dunn hailed a private carriage. The coachman looked at the man resembling a corpse being dragged behind the two and was momentarily at a loss. Dunn and Kornli simultaneously showed their detective badges, which finally calmed the coachman, and he drove them to the Blackthorn Security Company's station. A new prisoner. Luo Yao, who was on duty at Chinese Gate tonight, watched Dunn walk in, with Kornli dragging an unconscious man's body into Dunn's office. Is that the guy who wanted to search for the Antigonus family's notes? We finally got this guy to show his face. Dunn nodded, I'll interrogate him. Congratulations, these 2 nights weren't wasted. Luo Yao pushed the coffee powder on Dunn's desk to Kornli. You've made a contribution right after becoming a full member. I hope the final result won't disappoint my 2 nights. Kornli brewed himself a cup of coffee. He forced his eyes open and chatted with Luo Yao. 2 hours later, Kornli, who had already slumped on the desk, finally saw Captain Dunn emerge from below Chinese Gate. Kornli, you didn't go home to sleep. Dunn frowned. Captain. Kornli was on the verge of tears. You forgot to say it, didn't you? Captain, who is that guy downstairs? Luo Yao asked with a smile. He belongs to an ancient organization called the Secret Order. They were established in the 4th epoch and were connected to the Solomon Empire and some fallen nobles of that time. The Antigonus family's notes originated from them, and due to a member's negligence, they entered the antique market and were obtained by Welch. They had no choice but to send people to track them down everywhere. We know very little about the Secret Order, but we can trace clues on him by divination. This will have to wait until old Neil comes tomorrow for further interrogation. That guy just had 2 front teeth knocked out by Kornli and his speech is a bit airy, so the results from a dream and divination will be more direct. Dunn said. I was a bit heavy-handed just now. The Secret Order, this association of searchers among Beyonders, their purpose this time was clearly that notebook. Unfortunately, that notebook had its own will and was unwilling to appear before unrelated people. It's getting late, Kornli, you can go home to sleep. Tonight counts as overtime, come in tomorrow afternoon. Dunn said, this arrest report needs to be completed, and the task of guarding Chinese Gate tonight is entrusted to me. Luo Yao, you can also come in tomorrow afternoon. I've gotten enough rest, what should I do? Luo Yao took a 1-penny coin from the table, skillfully tossed it in the air, and stood up to straighten his cuffs that had been wrinkled from leaning on the table. Good night, Captain, Kornli. Kornli watched the coin in the air finally land in Luo Yao's palm, and he seemed to know what he should do. I am a marauder. The next day, after Kornli woke up at noon, he first went to Berkeley Men's Tailor Shop to pick up another set of formal wear and hunting attire, as well as the corresponding white shirts and hats. Under the enthusiastic recommendation of the boss, he, incidentally, bought a pair of nice-looking leather boots to match his formal wear, spending an additional 2 gold sol. Now he only had a little over 11 gold sol left. The Night Goddess Church did not have the subsequent Marauder potion formula, so he needed to find it himself, searching every black market and underground trading place, and earning enough gold sol, with each place requiring money. I'm just practicing the acting method. The gold sol I earn is just a byproduct of acting, Kornli mumbled, lying on the bed, thinking about what to do. Robbing banks was definitely unrealistic. Not only would every bank hire some low-level beyonders as security personnel, but once such an incident occurred, it would be a major case, possibly even notifying the captain. Would he have to pursue himself? Stealing the already pitiful money bags of commoners? No, they are already very tired every day. He absolutely cannot do anything against his conscience. A thought appeared in Kornli's mind. The Marauder potion within his body seemed to sense something, presenting every detail in his brain. His brain seemed to transform into a precise computer, calmly listing out each detail, with every step of the action forming a detailed list in his mind. He seemed to have become a professional. In the afternoon, Kornli arrived at the office on time. He did not go to Old Neil to get the Hermes materials. Instead, he started reading the recent police reports at Roseanne's desk. According to the system, the police station would send all recent cases, regardless of size, to the Beander teams of the 3 churches for reference, hoping they could find clues to important cases. Roseanne was off today, and there was no one in the office. Despite this, Kornli quickly finished reading all the files, memorizing everything that needed to be recorded, and then returned to the team office to continue studying the Hermes he hadn't finished the day before. The day passed quickly. In the evening, Kornli ate a 10-pence dinner box meal and patiently waited for the crimson moonlight to descend upon Tingen City's night sky. He returned home and changed into the hunting attire and flat cap that had been pre-wrinkled by the mattress, looking like a night shift worker preparing for work. All preparations were complete. Where to? The tram conductor asked impatiently when he saw Kornli board. Corel Street. Beyond the zone, 6 pence. Kornli took out 6 one-pence coins and handed them to the conductor, then walked to the very back of the carriage by the window, leaning against it, eyes slightly closed, napping like a worker on his way home. The tram made a clanging sound as it traveled, crossing the entire Tingen city eastward, and stopped at the intersection of Corel Street. This was the most chaotic area in the entire Tingen city. Within the area were 2 shoe factories and a parts manufacturing factory. The 3-shift work system meant that the bars here were filled from morning to night with tired workers who wanted a drink after work. Each of their faces was filled with a silent expression, working numbly, dragging their exhausted bodies to sleep, and continuing to work the next day, allowing them to see the end of their lives at a glance. Drinking a 3-pence glass of watered-down beer every day, chatting with the person next to them, and then watching the strippers on the stage was the most anticipated moment of their day. Hey, the last one, Corel Street has arrived. The conductor shouted impatiently. Kornli mumbled softly and got off the tram, searching along the roadside until he found his target on a nearby sign. Midnight Bolt Bar. This was the stronghold of one of Tingen City's largest gangs, the Gear Gang. The gang leader, Billard Matt, was a ruthless villain who devoured people without spitting out bones. His specialty was using usury to control desperate workers, then selling the wives and daughters of those who couldn't repay their debts to brothels in neighboring counties to serve as dancers. However, due to his covert methods, the police had yet to find direct evidence to arrest him, but the missing persons reports for this street had piled up thickly in the police station's archives. Kornli pulled open the bar door, and the thick smell of cheap tobacco, mixed with cheap beer and the strong body odor of the workers, almost knocked him over. He endured the smell, pushed through the crowded people, and walked directly to the seat at the end of the bar, near the restroom. The bartender expressionlessly sized up Kornli's attire and placed a glass of 8/10 full beer with a thud in front of him. 4 pence. Damn it, the price went up again. Kornli frowned, carefully took out 4 1-pence coins from his pocket, placed them one by one on the table, counted them again, and then reluctantly pushed them to the bartender with his palm. HMPH, another popper. From his looks, he can't even afford a second drink. The bartender swept the 4 coins into the bar with his right hand and turned to attend to other customers. Kornli picked up the glass and took a large gulp, then turned his body to lean against the bar as if resting, slowly watching the surrounding workers chatting loudly or cheering loudly for the crude dance moves of the dancers on the central stage, guzzling beer into their mouths. At the very back table, a brown-skinned man was slowly sipping bottled beer, gazing indifferently at the dancer on the central stage. There was a long scar beneath his left eye, as if from a knife cut, which matched the police's description of Billard. Standing beside him was a burly black man, wearing a short-sleeved leather jacket, with a bulging waist, clearly indicating he was carrying a pistol or a dagger. Patience, patience, Kornli, it will be soon. Kornli took small sips of beer, pretending to enjoy the alcohol, and squinted his eyes. Before long, the alcohol took effect. Billard Matt rubbed his stomach and stood up from his seat. His bodyguard followed closely behind him, swaying towards the nearby restroom. The time had come. Kornli quickly drank the last gulp of beer, swayed unsteadily as he stood up from his seat, landed his right foot, then pretended his left foot missed the floor, causing his entire body to lean to the left, precisely bumping into Billard's embrace. With his left hand, he grabbed Billard's arm, and the crossbow bolt on his wrist, covered in paralytic agent, lightly pricked Billard's arm. "Hey, drunkard, be careful." Billard's bodyguard pushed Kornli away with both hands. The latter mumbled something and staggered out of the room, brushing past people's shoulders. "Rude barbarian." Billard rubbed his arm, feeling a bit dizzy. This new batch of beer was indeed strong. Drinks enjoyed by the upper class truly were different. "Stand guard outside," Billard instructed, then pulled open the restroom door, walked in, and locked the door tightly. "My head, so dizzy." Kornli exited the bar, his eyes quickly regaining clarity. He circled around to the back door of the bar through a narrow alley, assessed the direction, pushed off the ground slightly with his feet, and pulled himself up by the iron sheeting used for rain cover above. With a slight effort, his 10 fingers easily pulled his body up. His feet made a soft thud on the iron sheet, and he pressed himself against the wall next to the window, his eyes scanning the movements inside the window. No one. He took out his dagger, gently inserted it under the window, carefully lifted the latch, supported himself slightly on the window with his left hand, and jumped into the only room on the second floor of the bar. This should be Billard's office. There were no footsteps outside. He quickly pulled open all the drawers, searching for what he needed. In the first drawer on the right side, he found a black leather-bound notebook. Opening it, he saw that it contained records of Billard's human trafficking, written in short words and phrases. Lena Christine, Limon City, 14 gold sol, 7 sol. Gwenny Gardner and Yasa Gardner, Stowen City, 22 gold sol, 13 sol. Louise Waters, Stowen City, 15 gold sol, 4 sol. These human trafficking records were enough to convict Billard. His head was destined for the gallows, and his body would be hanged at the city gate to endure the public's curses and rotten egg baptism. Kornli tucked the notebook into his embrace. A thought struck him. There seemed to be something in the bottommost drawer on the right. He opened the drawer and found a small metal box inside. He opened it and a satisfied expression appeared in his eyes. A frantic sound of footsteps coming upstairs echoed from outside the door. It seemed they had discovered Billard unconscious in the restroom and were now looking for him. Kornli quickly closed the 2 drawers, then swiftly climbed back through the window. He gently lowered the window latch with his right hand, and the latch made a click sound, sliding perfectly into its slot. Bang! The office door was violently pushed open by Billard's bodyguard. The room was empty. He looked around and then breathed a sigh of relief. A false alarm. The next morning, Kornli arrived at the team office on time. Due to staying up late last night, he was half an hour late today, but the team's management was extremely lax, and no one cared about it. It's truly a blessing that there's no fingerprint attendance system in this era. The documents sent by the police station, the entire gear gang was completely wiped out in the police's raid. Roseanne walked in and placed a document on the table. Their boss, Balar Mat, and his subordinates were arrested on the spot with irrefutable evidence. That scoundrel will be sent to the gallows the day after tomorrow. I remember the police had been tracking this guy for almost half a year, but they never had concrete evidence. Convicted so quickly. Leonard put down the poetry collection in his hand, his eyebrows slightly raised. It's interesting, actually. Someone threw a rock and a notebook with evidence of Balar's human trafficking directly through the police station window in the middle of the night. When Detective Haywood Matthew, who was on duty, chased after it, he didn't find a single person. But when he discovered the contents recorded in the notebook, he called all his colleagues and rushed onto a carriage, catching all the gear gang members red-handed at the Midnight Bolt bar in just 40 minutes, Roseanne smiled. They really should thank this kind-hearted person. Tingen City has a vigilante. Leonard reached for the report, flipped through it carefully, and then handed it back to Roseanne. There's no content about Beyonders. File it as usual. All right. Roseanne took the report and walked out. How do we usually deal with these vigilantes? Kornli asked with a slight hint of guilt. Someone is helping us govern the underworld of Tingen City. We're grateful beyond words, so why would we take any action? Leonard's gaze shifted from the poetry collection in his hand to Kornli opposite him. Don't tell me, you're that lovely vigilante. Although he knew Leonard was joking, a hint of panic still flashed through Kornli's heart. A calm feeling welled up from within, rapidly filling his limbs, making his hand, which was reaching for the coffee cup, steady. This is a necessary pathway for me to digest the potion, and I also helped Tingen City deal with a huge tumor. What did I do wrong? I can't just rely on stealing money from team members every day to digest the potion. I hope so, Kornli smiled. Being able to help the residents of Tingen City is a great honor. He felt that the marauder potion within him had loosened a bit after Roseanne said that. After dinner, as usual, he returned home, neatly hung up his coat, then took a cool shower, and wearing a shirt, drew the curtains. He took out a black bag from under the bed and poured its contents onto the bed. Scattered quarter pence, half pence, and 1 pence coins, mixed with £5 and £1 banknotes bearing the portraits of George III and George II, spilled onto the bed. The wonderful clinking of coins, mixed with the scent of banknotes, filled the entire room. Ha! I'm rich. Kornli excitedly counted. In total, yesterday's haul was 472 gold pounds, 4 sol, and 17 3/4 pence. This should be at least 2 or 3 months of income for the Midnight Bolt bar. Indeed, robbing once is satisfying, robbing continuously is always satisfying. He carefully divided the money into 2 portions, placing 460 gold pounds in the drawer and the remaining money in his purse. He needed to open an account at the Backlund bank. This money was enough for him to spend for a while, and then he would slowly look for the next unsuspecting prey. The next morning, Kornli arrived at the office as usual and handed the Hermes documents he had finished reading to old Neil, who looked at Kornli with a slight surprise. How's your Hermes coming along? Old Neil suddenly asked in Hermes. I've mastered the pronunciation, but conversation still needs improvement, Kornli replied in Hermes as well. Very good, do you want to start learning how to make charms? Old Neil looked at him approvingly. No. I think it's better not to get distracted learning other subjects before mastering one thing, Kornli said. If there's nothing to do this afternoon, I'd like to leave an hour early to go to the library and borrow some Hermes books. Old Neil nodded, took a note from the table, wrote a few book titles on it with an ink pen, blew the ink dry, and handed it to Kornli. These books are suitable for you to read now, but I don't recommend you waste time at the public library. All of these books can be borrowed from the Hoi University Library. Their collection of historical documents is second only to Backlund University and the Royal Library. Kornli looked at the book titles: The Evolution of Hermes, Mastering Advanced Hermes, and Related Records of Hermes in the Third and Fourth Epochs. Is their library open to the public? Their library is open 24 hours, and while it's not open to the public, your probationary detective badge can be used as a special library card. You just need to tell the librarian there that these books are related to some cases you're handling. Old Neil smiled. You need to flexibly use the various resources at your disposal. You are absolutely an expert in that regard, Kornli said admiringly. Old Neil's eyes narrowed in a smile. Want a cup of coffee before you go? Thank you very much, but I've already had too much caffeine recently, and… Kornli spread his hands. I can't always freeload off your and Luo Yao's coffee. It's time to prepare some suitable coffee powder for myself. When his former owner was a civil servant, he always used insufficient salary as an excuse to freeload Old Neil's coffee powder and the team's black tea. Now that he had a little savings, it was time to repay this favor. Feinpotter's Dunning black tea has a hint of lemon scent. It's my favorite flavor. As for coffee beans, you know what brand I like to drink, Old Neil said slyly. I promise to place both of these delicious drinks on your desk when I come to work next time. Kornli raised his right hand. After work, Kornli took a public carriage to Tingen University. A branch of the Hoi River flowed right through the middle of the university. The river flowed slowly, and male and female students could be seen everywhere, holding books and reading under trees and on lawns, bathed in the setting sun. Whether attending classes or simply strolling along the riverbank, it was an ultimate pleasure here. Youth is truly wonderful. Hello, I'd like to borrow these books. Kornli arrived at the library and handed Old Neil's note to the librarian at the front desk. She flipped through the catalog, then looked up. Yes, we have all these books. Please show your student ID. There's one copy left of each of the last two books, available only to history and language students. No, he's not a history student, otherwise I would definitely remember his face. A hearty voice emerged from beside him. It was a middle-aged man of medium build with bronze skin. He was clean-shaven, wore a top hat, had black hair and brown eyes, soft features, and his eyes revealed an indescribable sense of vicissitude. There was a tiny black mole below his right ear that was only noticeable upon close inspection. The bronze plaque on his chest clearly read, Isaac Eggers, Hoi University History Department Faculty. A big shot from Tingen City, someone I can't afford to offend, appeared next to me. Please accept my kneeling. I'm just a history enthusiast, and this is my identification, Kornli said, taking out his detective apprentice badge and handing it to Mr. Isaac. Mr. Isaac looked at the emblem on the badge, then sized up Kornli's face with a hint of surprise. Unbelievable, though you're only a detective apprentice, you're quite young. I could lie and say that a case at the police station requires these books, but actually, I'm very interested in this Hermes language, which is only used for rituals, so I wanted to borrow these books, Kornli replied honestly. He couldn't lie, it would only cause the other party to dislike him. At this moment, telling the truth was the best answer. This language is not only used for rituals, its pronunciation is closer to nature, just like giant and elf languages, Detective Apprentice Kornli, Mr. Isaac said in Hermes. Humanity's thirst for knowledge stems from instinct, and it is also a manifestation of human exploration, Kornli replied without hesitation in Hermes. This sentence was written on the flyleaf of the previous book he had read, Introduction to Hermes. For some people, the existence of Beyonders is not a secret in this world. The other party guessed his purpose and his identity, and his reply proved that he was just a newly initiated Beyonder. Not only did he prove his purpose to the other party, but he also subtly showed respect for the other party's scholar status and extensive knowledge. Your pronunciation is very accurate, and it carries a hint of classical flavor, Mr. Isaac smiled. I admire your studious spirit. When school starts in September, I have an elective course, a discussion course on the origin of Hermes and several related variant languages. If you have time, you're welcome to audit. He reached into his clothes, pulled out his library card, and handed it to the front desk lady. Please lend these 3 books to this dear Mr. Kornli under my name. I believe a gentleman who has such precise mastery of Hermes will cherish this valuable knowledge as if it were a treasure. Thank you for your generosity, Kornli said, taking the 3 books. If I have some academic questions, would you have time to answer them for me? My office is always open to those who seek knowledge, Mr. Azek said, pointing to the red 3-story building next door. Second floor, west side, history department. The last room is my office. I'm there every day, or you can write a letter. Azek Eggers, history department faculty, Hoi University. I will reply promptly. Goodbye, Mr. Azek, Kornli said, pressing the brim of his hat, politely bidding farewell to the 2, secretly pleased. He had, without realizing it, established a connection with this influential figure hidden in Tingen City. This was truly an unexpected gain. He could visit Hoi University more often when he had nothing to do. Studying had always been something he enjoyed, and he could also gain the favor of an influential figure. Gaining favor, something beneficial to himself, should definitely be included in his daily routine. Hoi University was not too far from his residence, so Kornli simply strolled home along the street. The hawkers, cries, the goods in the shop windows on both sides of the street, and the bustling crowds all gave him a vivid feeling. Suddenly, he saw a dirty little boy stealthily reaching his hand into the back waist of a passing pedestrian, effortlessly pinching out a wallet with 2 fingers, then swaggering past him with a triumphant look. This was too much. Robbing someone right in front of a marauder. He tucked the 3 books under his right armpit, and his left shoulder lightly brushed against the inner lapel of the little boy's clothes, taking the wallet into his own hand. He then shook it in his hand and gave the boy a triumphant smile. The little boy looked at Kornli, enraged and embarrassed. Kornli swiped his right hand across his waist, placing the side of his detective badge with the emblem in his right hand. The emblem, reflecting the sun, glinted in the little boy's eyes. Seeing this, the light in the little boy's eyes dimmed, and he took off running. Kornli threw the wallet behind the man, patted his shoulder, and tapped the ground with his free left hand. Ah, thank you, I'm such a sloppy fellow. The man happily picked up his wallet and stood up, just about to express his gratitude to Kornli again, when he realized that Kornli had already walked far away in those few seconds, and he couldn't keep up with his pace at all. Turning the corner, Kornli entered Eckerd's beverage store. At the owner's strong recommendation, he purchased a bag of Old Neil's favorite Intis coffee beans, 3 portions of Finepotter's Dunning black tea, and 2 different flavored and roasted types of Massey Highland ground coffee. He pulled out his wallet and gave most of the half-penny and quarter-penny coins to the owner, who expressed his gratitude with surprise. After all, in the LotM Kingdom, getting change was very difficult. Most of the time, buyers had to buy other things to round up to get the correct change. Please pack the coffee beans and 1 portion of Dunning black tea for me, I need to give them as a gift, Kornli said. Certainly, sir, the owner diligently packed his purchases into different bags, then took a large paper bag to carefully pack all the black tea and ground coffee, and even gave him a beautiful coffee spoon for free, seeing him off at the door. Tomorrow was Monday, and also his fixed weekly rest day as stated in his application. Besides reading, he had nothing else to do for now. Kornli put away the ground coffee at home and placed the rest in a bag, intending to give it to Old Neil on Tuesday morning. His next goal was to find a way to digest the potion and, by the way, explore the acting method of the Marauder potion. Although the potion within him had loosened last time, he was not satisfied with the extent of the loosening. He believed that there was more than one acting method for each sequence. If he could uncover the deeper rules of the acting method, as long as he acted appropriately, the digestion speed of the potion would become faster. Kornli suddenly remembered that he had robbed this Marauder potion from other thieves. They might have suitable formulas, or even know where to obtain the next sequence's formula. He needed information, and Kornli happened to know where he should get it. On Monday morning, Kornli slept until nearly 10 o'clock before getting out of bed. He had a lunch of black tea and a long sandwich at the coffee shop downstairs, then packed one to go and went to the Blackthorn Security Company. "Kornli, aren't you off today?" Roseanne asked, puzzled. "I came to bring old Neil some ground coffee and black tea," Kornli said. "And to look up some information." He looked around. His desk was still empty. Klein hadn't shown up today. "Our new clerical staff, Klein Moretti, isn't here today. He won't be in until tomorrow." "You know where everything is," Roseanne said. "I need you to help me watch the front desk for a few minutes." Her face flushed slightly. Kornli nodded understandingly, watching Roseanne's figure hurrying towards the washroom. Kornli rummaged through the shelves and quickly found the information he was looking for. The person was in the basement prison of the Tingen City Police Department. "This is a gift for you, old Neil." Kornli handed the coffee beans and black tea powder to old Neil, who smiled and nodded, watching him leave his office. Kornli strode into the Tingen City Police Department and showed his probationary detective badge to the receptionist. The receptionist immediately stood up and led him to the largest office on the second floor, belonging to Police Chief Marcel Spencer. "Probationary Detective Kornli, how may I help you?" Chief Marcel stood up and extended his right hand to shake Kornli's hand firmly. As the chief, he knew well that these probationary detective badges were issued to members of Beander teams. Each of them possessed abilities beyond ordinary people, and with just a word, they could mobilize him and his police officers. His words were filled with humility and respect. "Are the marauders arrested a few days ago still here?" "Of course, each of them is a repeat offender. We plan to transfer them to Tingen City Prison in a week, where they will stay for at least 3 years, Chief Marcel said. "I'd like to see a few of them," Kornli said. "Their statements might be very important. Please follow me." Chief Marcel stood up and led Kornli to the prison on the basement level. Outside the largest cell, Kornli saw 3 young men with dirty, messy hair, wearing white shirts and gray vests. Their sleeves and pants were largely torn off, their feet were bare, and their hands and feet were bound to the wall with heavy iron chains. Is this a method to prevent them from hiding keys in their bodies to escape? How simple and brutal. What did they eat every day? Kornli asked an unexpected question. 2 meals a day, 2 slices of black bread and a cup of clear water, Chief Marcel answered without hesitation. Feeding them is a waste of the police department's budget. These scumbags don't deserve any food worth more than 2 pennies. Understood. I'd like to be alone with them for a few minutes, Kornli said. The officers are at the door. Please instruct them if you need anything. Chief Marcel opened the cell door in front of them and courteously moved a stool from the side, inviting Kornli to sit at the cell door, while he himself left the basement. "Bah, police dogs, you won't get any useful information from the 3 of us." The man with short yellow hair in the middle stared at Kornli with a look of disdain. Kornli said nothing. He turned the stool beneath him 180 degrees, with the backrest facing forward, resting his hands on the backrest, and scanned the facial expressions of the 3 with cold eyes. The man on the left kept looking down at the cold stone floor, seemingly having accepted his future fate. The man in the middle glared at him fiercely, while the man on the right occasionally glanced at him but dared not meet his eyes. Each time his gaze swept over him, he would deliberately avoid his gaze. From his age, the man on the right seemed to have just come of age, his eyes slightly naive, making him a suitable subject for questioning. Even without the marauder's observational ability, he had obtained enough information from the reactions of the 3. Kornli unhurriedly opened the paper bag in his hand, revealing a long sandwich with 3 thick layers of smoked bacon, sufficiently fresh and crisp green vegetables, large slices of tomato, and a thick layer of black pepper, and took a large bite. Although he had just eaten, it was still a rare delicacy. The fresh sandwich and the strong taste of black pepper intensely stimulated the saliva and taste buds of the 3 people in front of him. Kornli, whose hearing was enhanced by the marauder potion, could clearly hear the sounds of the 3 swallowing their saliva and the rumbling from their stomachs. These 3 people had been hungry for several days. He swallowed the bread in his mouth and, pretending not to care, put the sandwich back into the paper bag. I want to know, Kornli said, feigning indifference, who is your boss? And who provided you with the potion formula? Answer these two questions, and you will get the rest of the sandwich, and possibly a reduced sentence. This is your time to think before I finish this sandwich. Kornli continued to open the sandwich bag very slowly. The corner of his eye caught all three of them simultaneously raising their heads and staring intently at the bag in his hand. Good, it's working. I'll talk, the man on the right suddenly spoke. I'll talk. Basil Ackerman, shut your stinking mouth. The boss will save us. The man in the middle struggled to turn his head towards the man on the right. Don't forget I brought you out of the slums. You brought me out of the slums, but then you casually threw me into the abyss like trash, and even stomped on my right hand when I reached the surface, Basil said fiercely. I couldn't steal the 5 money bags you demanded every day, so I could only survive on your leftover black bread. Compared to you, I'd rather trust the promise of this detective in front of me. Move me to a different cell, away from these filthy guys, and I'll tell you everything I know. Basil looked up at Kornli, his eyes full of hope. In the name of a gentleman, I ask you to keep your word. Of course. Kornli stood up and shouted, Officer. The officer at the door ran over upon hearing him. Detective, please give your orders. Unlock the handcuffs and leg irons of the man on the far right, take him to the first empty cell, and give him a cup of coffee at a suitable temperature, Kornli said. After an hour of interrogation, Kornli obtained enough information. He placed the paper bag containing the sandwich in front of Basil. I am a man of my word. Thank you, generous gentleman. Basil took the paper bag and, like a hungry wolf, devoured the sandwich inside with the warm coffee, a glistening tear falling from the corner of his eye. Kornli went upstairs to Chief Marcel's office. Chief Marcel looked up. Detective, do you have any other instructions? That fellow named Basil provided us with sufficiently important information. His conscience has not yet been extinguished, Kornli said. I have already arranged him in a separate cell. To prevent retaliation from the other 2 fellows, I hope he can be arranged in a prison in another county. The fellow in the middle has lost his conscience as a normal person. I hope your report can reflect this as well. I will state that in the report submitted to the judge, Chief Marcel nodded. This is just a small matter. This small matter determined a person's fate. Thank you. Kornli put on his top hat, nodded goodbye to Chief Marcel, and turned to leave the police department. According to Basil's account, their boss is named Alex Zorn and lives in the basement of the abandoned Vortex Church in the south of the city, where there are 2 guards at night. A slight smile appeared at the corner of Kornli's mouth. This was a challenge, but also a moment to test the combat effectiveness of his marauder potion. Kornli slowly rode a public carriage past the Vortex Church in the south of the Tingen city. The church's main door was already half abandoned, but Kornli's keen observation noticed that the side door still showed signs of use. According to the original owner's memory, the Vortex Church was once the first church established by the Storm Lord Church in Tingen City, but last year they built a more magnificent Peak of Storms church in the center of Tingen City, and the Vortex Church was gradually abandoned. Who would have thought that a leader of a marauder gang lived beneath a sacred church? This was the legendary Darkness Under the Lamp. 2 stops from the Vortex Church, Kornli got off the carriage and transferred to another carriage to return to his residence. He took out a pencil and paper and, relying on his memory, drew the outline of the Vortex Church. He marked several easy-to-climb spots and nodded with satisfaction as he looked at the church drawing in front of him. The marauder's observational abilities were truly formidable. At 10 o'clock in the evening, he changed into his familiar hunting attire, put on a duckbill cap, and took a private carriage to Antel Street, a block away from the Vortex Church. Using the shadows, he moved through the alley like a ghost, quickly arriving at the alley opposite the Vortex Church. His sharp eyes scanned every corner of the church and its vicinity. One guard leaned against the wall beside the side door, smoking his pipe to stay alert, while the other squatted in the small grove by the cemetery. No obvious weapons were visible on him, so he likely had a dagger or a pistol hidden at his waist. Kornli confirmed again and found no trace of a third guard. Since there were only 2 people, taking them out one by one was the best option. He quietly retreated from his current position, circled around, and approached the street next to the grove by the Vortex Church, slowly moving towards the hidden guard's location from behind. The guard looked back, seemingly sensing movement, and alertly half-turned to look in the direction Kornli was coming from. The guard at the door seemed to be completely immersed in the captivating feeling of tobacco, having entirely forgotten his duties. A mouse scurried through the nearby grass, its 4 paws making soft rustling sounds on the ground. It was just a damn mouse. He looked left and right, finding nothing unusual, then turned his head back, staring intently at the side door. That was close. Kornli slowly exhaled 2 streams of air from his nostrils. "Thank you, Mr. Mouse." It was the first time he found such small creatures so adorable. He carefully changed positions and continued to approach the guard in the grove. His left hand skillfully reached into his waist, dabbed a highly poisonous agent onto a crossbow bolt, and slowly raised his hand, aiming at the guard 10 meters away. Puff! A soft sound echoed in the air. The guard only felt a numbness at his waist, followed by a faint pain. Enemy attack. Waves of numbness spread, his eyes involuntarily drooped, and his legs and feet felt a strong sensation of weakness, causing his body to fall to the ground. He trembled as he raised his right hand to touch his waist, where his pistol was kept. If he fired a shot, the sound would be loud enough for the boss in the basement to hear. "My hand is so numb, my brain is no longer obeying me." An agile right hand reached out from behind, easily stealing the pistol from his waist. Kornli propped him against the tree, his knees curled up, his head resting on his knees, feigning sleep. Bane, it's time for your shift." The guard leaning against the wall walked over and saw Bane curled up under the tree, seemingly dozing. "Damn it, if Boss Alec knew you were slacking off and sleeping on duty, you'd be dead." He kicked Bane's leg, and Bane's body slumped to the ground, seemingly deeply unconscious. Impossible, Bane had never slept so soundly. "He's dead. There are enemies." A light crossbow bolt, aided by the crimson moonlight, pierced his neck. A gurgling sound came from his throat as he staggered forward 2 steps, then fell with a thud beside Bane. "Farewell, you two." Kornli learned from Basil that those who could serve as Alec's guards were his absolute confidants. Their hands were stained with blood, both of strangers and of disobedient marauders. There was no need to show them mercy. The crossbow bolt was tipped with a deadly poison. Kornli stood up from behind a tombstone, fumbled through their bodies for a moment, put their money bags into his jacket pocket and at his waist, pulled out the 2 crossbow bolts and put them back into his arm quiver, then quietly moved towards the church's side door. The church's side door was already dilapidated. Without the church's maintenance, it would creak loudly when pushed open. In the dead of night, these sounds would be particularly noticeable and would definitely draw Alec's attention from inside. However, Kornli was well prepared. He pulled out a bottle of cooking oil and a small brush from his in my arms, carefully applying a thick layer of oil to the door's iron hinges. He put the small bottle and brush back into his in my arms and cautiously pushed open the side door. The side door slid open quietly. These small tricks were still effective. He pushed open the door and, using the faint moonlight streaming through the window, observed carefully. There were 2 passages, one to the left and one to the right. The left passage led to the main sanctuary, and the right passage led to the church's back room. The stairs leading downstairs should be over there. He cautiously hugged the wall, tiptoeing forward step by step. Using the moonlight, he turned a corner and saw the iron staircase leading downwards. A faint glow of candles shone from below the stairs. The one living downstairs was the boss they spoke of, Alec Zal. This distance was about 30 meters, and he would need at least 5 seconds to run across it. Adding the distance to downstairs and the search time, he would need at least 2 minutes. It seemed he needed a diversion tactic, but this wouldn't stump him. He glanced at the nearby wall, lightly stepping his right foot on a brick protruding less than 10 centimeters from the wall. He pulled hard on the extinguished gas lamp cover beside him with both hands, and his entire body, like a monkey, lightly jumped to directly above the main door. He pulled out the enemy's pistol from his lower back, fired a shot into the air, and then quickly threw the pistol beside the two corpses. Bang! The sound of the pistol was like a clap of thunder in Kornli's ears. Kornli waited patiently for over 10 seconds, then the side door was suddenly pushed open. A man in a bathrobe rushed out, looked left and right, and charged towards the cemetery. Good opportunity. Kornli pulled himself up by the door frame of the side door with both hands, and like a slippery fish, he flipped 180 degrees over the slowly closing side door and slid inside. His feet lightly touched the ground, and he quickly rushed towards the stairs. Time was short. Gunshots. It's an alarm, an invasion. Bane, Antok, where are you? Alec whispered. No one answered. Who had such great ability to find his well-hidden lair? Was it the Mole Gang from the South City, or the Gear Gang from the East Borough that specialized in human trafficking? No, wasn't the latter already arrested by the police station? Was it the Tingen city police officers? No, it didn't seem like it, they always moved in groups. If it were them, they would have swarmed him and pinned him to the ground by now. Official Beander. Damn it, who exactly is it? He walked towards the cemetery under the crimson moonlight. Before he had gone a few dozen meters, he found the bodies of Bane and Antok. The two of them were leaning against a tree, looking as if they were asleep. The white foam at their mouths proved that their sleep was not as simple as it appeared. They came for me. Run, must run fast. Alex straightened up and leaned against a tree, carefully observing his surroundings. There was no movement at all, only the rustling sound of wind blowing through the branches and leaves. There was no other sound. There's only one person, two at most. Damn it, they're after my savings from the past 2 years. And that potion formula I hadn't had time to use. They want to rob me, these bastards. He angrily drew the pistol he always carried and ran towards his basement. The basement was empty. The white wax on the bedside, and his copy of Wuthering Heights, lying face down on the bed showed no signs of being moved. He frantically pulled out the small box where he kept his ill-gotten gains from under the bed. The coins and gold soul inside were scattered, with no trace of anyone having touched them. Great, they haven't had time to. Night, a calm Hermes voice came from the roof, and at the same time, a silver piece the size of a baby's palm was thrown from the roof to his feet. Alec felt a dizzy spell, his head spinning, and he fell to the ground. With the last bit of light in his eyes, he saw a dark figure gracefully leaping down from the roof, easily taking away the savings he had squeezed from his subordinates over the past 2 years. The grief in his heart could not resist the power of the drowsiness amulet, and he fell into a daze and slept. What simple work. Kornli smiled slightly. He took an oil lamp from the table, picked up the amulet that had lost its effect, and pulled out Alec's usual money bag from the clothes next to him. With the oil lamp and the small box in his left hand, and Alec's body in his right, he struggled out and threw him on top of the other two bodies. Bang! Bang! 2 gunshots echoed through the night sky of Tingen City. To conceal his secret, he followed the small path north for several kilometers, then found a private carriage by the roadside to go to the South City, where he changed to another private carriage to return home. It was a hard night, but the harvest was bountiful. Inside the small box, plus 3 money bags, he received a total of 940 gold soul and 10 soul. Adding his previous 460 gold soul in savings and loose change, his net worth instantly reached 1,412 gold soul, 4 soul, and 6 pence. He found a bag to put the 1,400 gold soul in, and stuffed the remaining 12 gold soul, 4 soul, and 6 pence into his money bag. Under the box, he also found a crumpled piece of paper wrapped around a silver ring. Under the gas lamp, he saw a line of small words engraved on the inner circle of the ring: "Only the keeper of secrets can enter." What secret is hidden in this ring? He stuffed the ring into his money bag. He could find an opportunity to ask a true seer about it. Should he let Klein try? He is a true seer. He quickly rejected the idea. It's not convenient yet. Well then, it seems he needs to find a suitable seer to help him. He opened the paper, which contained a formula written in LotM. Sequence 9 Marauder. Main ingredients: 1 blood-spotted black mosquito, the core of a candle-eating spirit. Auxiliary ingredients: 100 milliliters of another's blood, 1 sapphire, 10 grams of verbena powder. He felt the potion in his body digest another portion, this time slightly more than the last. Was it because this time he induced the other party to voluntarily reveal the location of his hidden money? So, a rule for acting as a marauder could be added. Advanced thievery should make the other party voluntarily hand over valuable property, rather than actively stealing it oneself. With this realization, he fell into a deep sleep on the bed. The next morning, Kornli arrived at the office as usual and immediately saw Klein busy at his own desk. "Good morning, Klein." "Ah, good morning, Mr. Kornli." Klein sat down and pushed a familiar coffee can over. "Would you like a cup of coffee?" "Please call me Kornli, and." Kornli smiled and handed over the coffee and black tea powder he had bought the day before yesterday. "When I'm sitting at this desk, this can hasn't had coffee powder in it for a long time." Klein awkwardly took back the coffee can he had just pushed over. Kornli took the hot water and brewed a cup of Masic Mountain coffee for himself and Klein. This coffee powder was not roasted too deeply and had a hint of citrus and lemon flavor, making it one of the world's top coffee powders. "What work did Captain Dunn give you?" "For now, not much work. Captain Dunn wants me to study mysticism with old Neil for a while, and also to find the whereabouts of that Antigonus family diary, and practice my marksmanship." Klein nodded. "These tasks will make my daily working hours very fulfilling." "Aha, former clerical staff and current clerical staff are having a pleasant exchange." Old Neil passed by the doorway. "It's been a long time since I've seen such a gratifying scene." "Kornli, did you borrow those Hermes books from Hoi University?" "Hoi University? His university?" Klein's eyes lit up. "Yes, when I was borrowing books, I saw a history lecturer named Isaac Eggers. He is a very kind person and lent me the books using his library card." Kornli smiled. "By the way, I heard Captain Dunn say you were also a history student at Hoi University. You must know Mr. Isaac too, right?" "Mr. Isaac is a history lecturer who is extremely serious about knowledge but very enthusiastic towards his students," Klein said with a smile. "I'm glad we have common friends. All right, you two youngsters." Old Neil knocked on the door. "Klein, it's time for your daily study. My old bones don't have as much energy as you young people. I still hope to have enough rest time in the afternoon." Klein picked up his coffee, greeted Kornli, and walked towards old Neil's office. Kornli smiled, picked up the coffee can in front of him, and poured all the coffee powder he had prepared into the can. "Study hard, make progress every day, my dear fool." In the following days, nothing happened at all. Kornli and Klein would chat briefly every day, then quickly get into their daily study and work routines. The former's daily task was simply reading, while the latter followed old Neil to learn mysticism and practiced gunmanship in the evenings, living a very fulfilling life every day. Time gradually approached Friday. "Today is truly a quiet day," Leonard said, putting down his poetry collection and watching the morning sunshine on the window. "I hope every day this week is like this, and that we don't have to be too busy." "Ha, do you know what it means not to casually make a promise?" Kornli rolled his eyes helplessly and continued to read The Evolution of Hermes, a book that covered much of the world's historical changes, making it as captivating as a historical novel. After work, he should look for a legitimate seer club to see if anyone could interpret how to use that ring. Crack! A huge clap of thunder echoed through the sky, and large raindrops fell out of nowhere, pouring down in Leonard's despairing gaze, turning the already uneven ground into a vast expanse of water. Such heavy rain! Leonard sighed. Kornli thought he was about to improvise a poem, but when he looked up and saw Leonard staring at the ceiling for a long time, he didn't hear the next line of poetry that Leonard should have recited. Your midnight poet, is it not suitable for writing poetry during the day? Or are you simply not suited for this title? Damn it, I can't remember what word to use for the rhyme. Leonard rolled his eyes. Forget it, let's just leave it at that. If you have nothing constructive to say, then don't say it. Leonard, I need you to guard the Chinese gate. I have an urgent matter to attend to at the church, Captain Dunn said, walking in wearing a cloak. Kornli, everyone else has their own tasks. You're the only one left in the team. All right, Captain. All right, Captain. Leonard picked up his coffee cup and poetry collection and hurried downstairs. Kornli watched the captain descend the stairs. Soon after, old Neil came up from below and greeted Kornli. You've mastered Hermes well enough. Would you like to learn how to make talismans? Next week, Kornli said, holding up the book in his hand. I'll be able to finish reading all 3 of these books in 2 more days. I want to finish these books and return them to Hoi University before learning. In that case, I'll adjust Klein's time for learning talismans to next Monday. No, Tuesday, he's off on Monday. You can come and listen if you have time too, old Neil said with a smile. It's more interesting to teach 2 people at once than just one. No, you just want to save some effort, don't you? I'm looking forward to it, Kornli nodded. Old Neil returned to his office. Kornli continued to read for a while, then rubbed his temples. Just then, there was a sudden knock at the door. Thump thump thump. Come in, Roseanne's sleepy voice came from the reception room. Klein poked his head out of old Neil's room, watching curiously. Blackthorn Security Company rarely had outside visitors. Who could it be? The door opened, and a man entered, wearing a semi-tall top hat, with the left shoulder of his black suit soaked. His temples were streaked with gray, and he carried a closed umbrella. He looked at Klein and the others and said, Is this the former mercenary team? You could say that, Roseanne replied familiarly. The tall, thin man coughed and said, I have a task I'd like to entrust. A task to entrust. You've probably come to the wrong place, but with such heavy rain, this matter must be urgent. Kornli didn't speak. Roseanne should be familiar with this kind of situation and know how to answer to satisfy the other party and make him leave, or to make him wait a while until the captain or Leonard had time. Wait, rainy day, commission. If I'm not mistaken, the person who came must be Mr. Kornli. Someone has a commission, Roseanne called out from inside. Ah, it seems I'm the only official member left. Kornli put down The Evolution of Hermes from his hand, adjusted his collar, and walked out to the reception room next to Roseanne. Hello, sir, may I ask your name? Hello, my name is Cody. I am Mr. Victor, the tobacco merchant's butler, and I have come on behalf of my master, Mr. Victor, with an urgent matter that requires the assistance of your security company. Mr. Victor's youngest son, little Elliot, has been kidnapped. We have already reported it to the police, and although it has received sufficient attention, Mr. Victor, based on his previous experiences, does not have much confidence in the efficiency of the police station. He needs to obtain sufficient information through your security company's channels to facilitate timely rescue by the police station. They haven't demanded a ransom, but I'm worried. Butler Cody nervously pulled out a handkerchief to wipe the mixture of rain and sweat from his face. I'm very worried. Little Elliot is Mr. Victor's only child. I've watched him grow up since he was little, and I don't want him to suffer any harm. Mr. Victor is willing to offer £100 in cash for any useful information about little Elliot. If you can find a way to successfully rescue little Elliot, Mr. Victor is willing to generously give £200 as a token of his gratitude. £200, his only son. I believe a tobacco merchant with connections in the South should offer a more generous reward than that, Kornli said deliberately, rubbing his chin with his left hand. Mr. Victor prefers that your company provide sufficient information, and the rescue operation be left to the police, as they have sufficient firepower and experience. The latter is the reward I requested from my master, Butler Cody said frankly. This is our first time cooperating with your security company, and I am unsure of your capabilities. Is that so? What's about to happen will make your jaw drop. Thank you for your candor. Kornli turned to Roseanne. Draft the contract. Roseanne looked at Kornli with surprise. Seeing the affirmative look in his eyes, she walked into the inner clerical office. Soon after, the clatter of a typewriter could be heard from inside. Please wait for me here for a moment. Kornli walked into the inner room. Roseanne stopped typing. Do you need to wait for the captain or others to return before taking action? Don't worry, I'm just going to do a divination. If there's a problem, I'll request backup immediately. Kornli ruffled Roseanne's long brown hair. Don't forget, I was taught by old Neil. If there's any danger, I'll evacuate the scene as quickly as possible and request assistance from nearby police officers. Thank you for your concern, I'll be fine. Roseanne no longer hesitated and quickly typed out the employment contract. Butler Cody sealed it with his personal stamp without any hesitation. After all, this was already the only security company in the vicinity with available personnel. Since you have accepted the commission, I will now describe the details of the case. Cody straightened his back and once again repeated the painful experience he had described to the police department. 3 people, handguns, and no difference from the case in his memory. Kornli nodded inwardly. We await your good news. Butler Cody stood up and bowed, attempting to leave. You came by carriage, right? Then please wait for us in the carriage. We'll prepare and depart shortly, Kornli said to Butler Cody. Every minute is precious. Thank you. Butler Cody's trust in this security company greatly increased, and he stood up and left. Klein, you've been studying for a few hours. Do you need some fresh air? Kornli turned to Klein, who was still peeking out of old Neil's room. You're a seer, aren't you? Me. Klein pointed to himself with his index finger. I'm still a civilian. The targets are just 3 ordinary people, with only 2 shotguns and 1 pistol, while we are well-trained Beander team members. 2 against 3, I think we have a good chance of winning, Kornli said. You're responsible for finding them, and I'm responsible for beating them up. If we encounter danger, we'll immediately go to the nearest police station for help. The first half of the sentence made Roseanne, who was beside him, pause. Why would 2 against 3 give them a good chance of winning? But the latter half of the sentence greatly boosted Klein's confidence. He shouldn't be too slow at running away. I also brought a drowsiness amulet made by old Neil. For ordinary people, it's enough to make them sleep for a few minutes, which will give us enough time to escape. Roseanne nodded. Kornli had indeed taken sufficient safety measures. Klein's heart completely settled. So, what does divination require? Kornli asked. Close-fitting clothes, or accessories worn on the person, can both increase the success rate of finding someone. Klein quickly put on his coat, picked up his cane, and donned his semi-tall silk top hat. He followed Kornli out of the room, and the 2 boarded Butler Cody's comfortable carriage. This is a photo of young Master Elliot. Butler Cody pulled a black and white photo from his In My Arms and handed it to Kornli. He saw 2 people board the carriage, and his confidence in finding young Elliot increased slightly. We also need young Elliot's personal clothes, or any accessories he carried with him, Kornli said, seeing the butler look at him in surprise. You know, as a security company, we have a well-trained pet. Even in a heavy downpour, it can find traces young Elliot left behind. Why didn't you bring it? Butler Cody accepted the explanation but still asked, puzzled. Its appearance would scare ordinary people like you, Kornli explained. It prefers to be alone, and if it encounters strangers, its barking will leave you bewildered. After you leave, we will go to another place to bring it out. Klein rolled his eyes where Butler Cody couldn't see him. Barking, pet. I insist you use a different excuse next time. Of course, that's your internal matter. Butler Cody nodded, tapping the small window in front with his right hand. Let's go back. Fearing detection by the kidnappers, Cody stopped the carriage a street away from the house, left in a hurry, and returned shortly after, pulling out a complete set of clothes young Elliot had worn from a bag. A shirt, a vest, a small formal suit, a bow tie, and a charm of the Lord of Storms with a bronze base, carved with symbols representing gales and waves. Victor is a believer of the Lord of Storms. Why didn't you seek help from the church? Kornli asked. Father Milton Isaac promised to pray for young Elliot, but he said this was a worldly matter, and the church found it inconvenient to intervene, Butler Cody said, spreading his hands helplessly. Perhaps it's because the money we usually donate isn't enough. In that case, we have no other questions. Kornli casually took the butler's large black umbrella, and he and Klein got off the carriage, finding a private carriage nearby. A private carriage, won't that be a bit expensive? Klein followed Kornli onto the carriage with lingering apprehension, watching Kornli generously pull out a sole banknote and hand it to the coachman. Calculated by time. All right, where to, sir? The coachman happily took the banknote and asked. Wait a moment. Kornli looked at Klein in surprise. Didn't old Neil tell you that all expenses during a mission are reimbursable? But this isn't a mission. This is the duty of Blackthorn Security Company, Kornli said solemnly. Reimbursement. Thank Rosal for inventing such a wonderful word and applying it so well to life. Let's begin, our dear hound. Kornli handed the bag containing the clothes to Klein. I told you, I'm only responsible for beating people up. Now was the time to test his mysticism results. Klein picked up the clothes, spread them neatly on the carriage floor, placed his cane on top, and closed his eyes slightly, silently chanting in his heart. The location of Elliot, the owner of this clothing. After 7 repetitions, he opened his eyes and released the silver-inlaid wooden cane. The cane stood upright in the center of the carriage as if it had a will of its own. Subtle and invisible movements came from all around, and Klein felt as if he was being watched by indifferent eyes. He silently chanted again, Elliot's location. The cane fell straight forward, and a satisfied smile appeared in Kornli's eyes. Straight ahead. He slammed his right hand heavily on the carriage board behind the coachman and shouted loudly. Turn left. Turn right. Straight ahead. It was the first time the coachman had received such commands, but for the sake of the green banknotes, he carried out Kornli's orders without fail. After circling a building, Klein could feel that they had arrived. Stop. Kornli slammed the carriage board with his right fist, and he and Klein got off the carriage. A large umbrella was held over Klein's head, and the two leisurely walked into a 3-story building. This building had 3 stories, and its layout was similar to rental apartments on Earth. The space on each floor was divided into several rooms. After Klein's divination wand method calculated, the kidnappers were in the innermost right room on the 3rd floor. They should be inside, Klein said, pointing to the room. According to old Neil's teaching, he opened his spirit vision to observe. 1, 2, 3, 4. He suddenly felt as if pairs of eyes and all the nearby spirits were watching his and Kornli's every move from behind, just like the feeling he had encountered in that small garden when he first met Miss Daly. Had he attracted something bad? He suppressed this uncomfortable feeling and remained silent. I also see 4 people. The one in the middle has a smaller spirit body, that should be the poor young Elliot, Kornli said. Butler Cody said they have 2 shotguns and 1 revolver. What should we do? Charge in. Klein gripped his cane tightly, feeling slightly nervous. No need for such trouble. Kornli pulled out a drowsiness amulet from his lower back, infused it with spirituality, and 2 seconds later, slipped it through the gap between the bottom of the door and the floor. Night, he uttered in Hermes. Klein immediately felt a wave of dizziness, relying on his meditation to forcefully maintain his consciousness. At this moment, his left arm felt a pang of pain. Kornli had lightly pinched his forearm. Thank you. 3 seconds have passed, they should all be asleep. Kornli pushed the door, but it didn't budge, seemingly locked. Damn it, I forgot about that. Kornli calmly pulled out a dagger, gently inserted it into the door crack, and pried it open with force. The door opened easily, and the 4 people inside were all sleeping like dead pigs. Bang, bang, bang. Kornli didn't hesitate to deliver a punch to the heads of the 3 kidnappers, his thick fists knocking them out one by one. I told you, you're responsible for finding people, and I'm responsible for beating people up. He flashed 2 rows of white teeth at Klein. Go in and tie them up, Kornli said, pulling 3 pairs of handcuffs from his lower back. Use their cloth belts to tie their feet, knot them with a sailor's knot so they'll only get tighter if they struggle, then gag them. Klein took the handcuffs without hesitation, entered the room, and following Kornli's instructions, first cuffed their hands behind their backs, then untied their belts one by one, tore off a piece to stuff into their mouths, and finally used the belts to tightly bind their feet. While Klein was doing all this, Kornli pulled out despair, and stood guard at the door, his eyes catching sight of a fellow holding a paper bag filled with bread and butter, swaying as he climbed halfway up the stairs, then turned around, his eyes meeting Kornli's squarely. Stop, Kornli said coldly. Cease all your movements, and raise your hands. The latter's mouth twitched, and he obediently put down the bag of bread, feigning composure as he raised his hands. Sir, is there some misunderstanding? Walk up slowly, don't make any other movements. All these kidnappers have been captured by us. Upon hearing the word, kidnappers, the latter froze, then pushed off with his left foot, intending to rush downstairs. Black Knight, Kornli calmly uttered in Hermes. Bang! A bullet struck his right leg directly. He let out a loud howl, clutching his calf as he tumbled downstairs. Kornli took out the used, sleep charm, from his pocket and threw it onto the floor downstairs. Klein heard the sound and came out of the room. What happened? There's a 4th kidnapper. I just bluffed him a bit, and it turns out they're indeed part of the same group. I originally wanted him to fall asleep with the guys inside, but the charm in my left hand wasn't thrown very accurately. Kornli calmly watched the kidnapper on the 2nd floor endure the pain and try to escape again. Bang! A shot directly hit the wooden floor in front of him. Don't move, or the next bullet will hit your head, and a dirty floor is not easy to clean up, Kornli said in a cold voice. How is little Elliot inside? Klein knew that this question was directed at him. He just woke up, just a bit startled, Klein said. What do we do now? You stay here and watch, I'll go tie up the one downstairs. Kornli walked down the stairs, inverted the grip of despair, and forcefully struck the 4th kidnapper on the head, knocking him unconscious. He then carried the body up step by step, untied his belt, and skillfully tied him up like a zongzi rice dumpling. Klein felt that this method of tying seemed unusually familiar, as if he had seen it in some film in his previous life. He still needed to learn this mature tying method from the team members. Hey, little Elliot, don't worry, you'll be home soon. Kornli patted little Elliot's head, stood up, and casually clapped his hands. Klein, lend me your cane. Go find a patrolling police officer nearby and have them send people over. You did bring your detective's ID, right? Klein said, handing over his cane. Why do you need a cane? To hit people, Kornli said, winking. Hitting with a pistol grip will hurt your hand. Klein. He swallowed, and finally couldn't help but say, this is a new cane. Got it, Kornli nodded. I'll use it carefully. Klein walked out of the room, and Kornli's voice still came from inside, remember to bring an umbrella. All right, I'll bring it. Klein, with a smile, found the police officers on duty nearby. After he showed his detective's ID, they did not neglect him at all. They quickly brought Klein to the police station, sent one person to notify the Victor family, and then summoned 4 colleagues before arriving at the room on the 3rd floor. Hey, little Elliot, holding Klein's cane, forcefully struck the head of a kidnapper who was just about to wake up. The latter let out a wail and fell unconscious again. So fun, little Elliot said, clapping his hands and laughing. Damn, my cane. Hee hee, children's curiosity is just strong, Kornli said, gesturing to the police officers. Take them away, the credit is yours. The police officers' eyes lit up upon hearing this. Each carrying a person, they walked out of the door, smiling and waving their thanks to Kornli and Klein. Who wouldn't want credit that falls from the sky? Heavy footsteps echoed from the stairwell. Plump Victor and his butler Cody rushed up from downstairs. Kornli quickly pulled Klein back a step to prevent the two from being severely injured by a heavy tank. My dear little Elliot, Mr. Victor said, embracing little Elliot with tears. This overly heavy love moved Kornli and Klein deeply. It's good that he's all right, it's good that he's all right. Butler Cody murmured. Seeing little Elliot's thin shirt, he quickly took off his formal jacket and put it on him. Cough cough, Kornli coughed twice. Mr. Victor, congratulations on being reunited with your child. How would you like to pay, cash or check? If it's a check, please also give our front desk lady the 5% conversion fee, as our costs are quite high. Klein nodded along with Kornli. This was a large sum of money, and he and Kornli had completed it in just 2 hours. No matter how it was divided, his empty wallet would soon be full. No problem, Butler Cody will pay all due fees with you, Mr. Victor said, standing up with difficulty and bowing deeply to Kornli and Klein. Please accept my gratitude. Then we respectfully take our leave. Kornli handed the cane back to Klein and went with Butler Cody to an empty room on the 2nd floor. The latter solemnly pulled out a wallet from his chest, filled with crisp green 10-pound notes bearing the portrait of King George I. Thank you very much. Butler Cody counted 20 notes and handed them to Kornli. I don't know how to express my gratitude. It's nothing, we're also very happy to have rescued your child, Kornli said casually. I'm right, aren't I, Mr. Cody? I don't know what you're talking about, Butler Cody stammered. Your concern for little Elliot has exceeded the attention a butler should have. You were even able to persuade your master to offer a 200 gold pound reward. If, as you said, your master is not exceptionally wealthy, this sum is already an enormous amount. The first thing you did when you entered the room was to check on little Elliot's physical condition. This must be your usual habit from frequently taking care of him. This didn't attract my excessive attention until I saw the look of concern in your eyes. Your eyes were filled with a father's guilt and concern for his child. That kind of expression, going beyond duty, cannot be faked. Given Mr. Victor's physique, it would likely be very difficult for him to have a child. Of course, your final answer also confirmed my guess, didn't it? Kornli smiled. Klein's eyes widened. He hadn't expected such a big secret to pop out at this moment. Every secret has its price. Kornli confidently raised his head, his eyes scanning Butler Cody and the wallet in his hand, looking at Butler Cody with a smiling gaze. I hope you can keep this secret. Butler Cody reluctantly pulled 2 more 10-sol banknotes from his wallet and handed them to Kornli. These extra expenses will have to be deducted from my weekly salary. Raising one's children with someone else's money is a very cost-effective method, but your generosity is enough for us to keep this secret, Kornli said with a smile, shaking hands with Butler Cody, and then left the room with Klein. The heavy rain gradually subsided, but an umbrella was still needed. Kornli and Klein hailed a private carriage. After boarding, Kornli said, to 36 Zuideland Street. All right, sir. With a new income, Klein no longer complained about the high cost of the private carriage this time. Here, yours, Kornli handed Klein a 10-sol banknote. Goodness, a 10-sol banknote, one of the largest denominations in this world, it was simply too tempting. Klein took it, looked at the portrait of George I on it, deeply inhaled the scent of ink emanating from it, and then returned it to Kornli's hand. I can't take it. This part of the money belongs to the team's legitimate income and should be distributed by the captain. I've already received the team's income, 200 sol. Kornli spread his hands. This part is our extra income. Come on, repeat after me, extra. Come. You should know that half of all income from such missions will be deducted by the team and given to Mrs. Oriana as public income. The remaining half goes to the team members who undertook the mission. How much can I get? Klein looked at Kornli with hope. You are still a civilian staff member, and according to regulations, you can only receive 10%, which is 10 sol. Roseanne told me that you just moved, and you also have a younger sister who is currently in school. Your brother, I hear, works at an import-export company, and the work there is hard and tiring. You need some money to help with household expenses. Kornli reinserted the 10-sol banknote into Klein's hand. This is extra income. You contributed earlier, so you should accept it. I feel like I didn't really contribute much just now, Klein muttered. I didn't do much more work than you did. Kornli rubbed his chin, put the 210 sol into the pocket of his formal suit, and then reached for 4 money pouches from his waist. These were precisely the money pouches from the waists of the 4 robbers. Klein's eyes widened. This, half for each of us. Kornli poured out all the money from the 4 money pouches onto the back seat of the carriage. It totaled 14 sol, 6 sol, and 12 pence. He took one of the nearby money pouches, put 7 sol, 3 sol, and 6 pence into it, and handed it to Klein. If we don't take it, it'll just benefit those guys at the police station. They've already taken all the credit, they won't mind us taking some loose change. Can it really be like this? This is mate. Come, Kornli said with emphasis. Thank you. Klein put all the sol into his money pouch. This was simply a miracle. In less than 4 hours, he had acquired a legitimate 17 sol, 3 sol, and 6 pence. This didn't even count the 10 sol that would be given to him later today or in a few days. His money pouch suddenly swelled up. Going on missions with Kornli was simply wonderful. He hoped he could go on the next mission with Kornli again. Kornli looked at Klein opposite him, a hint of a smile in his eyes. Oh, fool, the poorest true god in this world, I am trying every possible way to fill your money pouch. I can't directly give you money, so I can only use this indirect method. It seems our mission for today is complete. Kornli pulled out a 1-pence coin, tossed it into the air, and caught it with his hand. What appeared was the side with the LotM flag, the reverse side. This meant the mission was not entirely complete, or there were other hidden parts. Are you divining? Klein asked curiously. I was indeed wondering if this mission was completely finished. Kornli shook his head. My grasp of mysticism is not as extensive as yours. This probably cannot be considered a complete divination. Let me try. Klein took the coin and muttered to himself, this mission, we have completed it. He opened his eyes, tossed the coin into the air, then caught it with his hand, and opened his palm. The reverse side. What went wrong? Klein frowned, still lost in thought even after the 2 of them got out of the carriage and entered the headquarters. What exactly did he miss? Mission complete. Kornli leaned against Roseanne's desk. Thanks to Klein's help, we found little Elliot. Oh my goodness, you found him in just a few hours. Roseanne looked at Kornli and Klein in disbelief. The latter walked into the reception room with a bewildered expression, almost bumping into the wall when he turned right. And, we seem to have discovered a secret as well. Kornli winked at Roseanne, leaned forward, and whispered. Oh my goodness, how could that be? Roseanne and Brett's giggling sounds reached old Neil's room next door. The latter walked out, and soon after, old Neil's hearty laughter could be heard. Just now, to prevent danger, I used the 2 sleeping charms you gave me. Kornli pulled out 2 silver pieces that had lost their spirituality and handed them to old Neil. Can they be recharged? No, used charms can only be discarded. You can fill out a reimbursement form, and I'll give you 2 new ones, old Neil smiled. I haven't been this happy in a long time. Is the captain back? Kornli asked. In his office. Kornli walked into Dunn's office. The latter was leaning on the sofa, smoking a pipe. Seeing Kornli enter, a slight smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. I heard everything. You and Klein did well. How did he feel on his first mission? A bit nervous, which is to be expected, Kornli said. But I'm very willing to go on missions with him again. The seer's ability is indeed outstanding. Do you regret choosing Marauder? The Marauder's abilities are more suited for me, Kornli said regretfully. Aside from Hermes and Ancient Hermes, my grasp of other mystical knowledge isn't as quick as Klein's, but good offensive and reconnaissance abilities make up for all of that. Greed is a vice that needs to be abandoned. Dunn nodded approvingly, took a slip of paper from the table, wrote 2 entries on it, stamped it with his seal, and handed it to Kornli. You know the team's distribution system. Hand that money over to Mrs. Oriana for archiving. 90 sol of it is yours, and the remaining 10 sol should be transferred to Klein. Thank you, Captain. The team's reimbursement system is really fast. Captain. Klein stumbled in, a not-so-small bump on his head, evidently having just bumped into a wall. Kornli, you're here too. I know what went wrong just now. It's that notebook, that Antigonus family notebook. That notebook was right across from the house we just visited, Klein said. I actually didn't notice the hint my spirituality gave me just now. Since you have a hint, this is an important clue. Captain Dunn stood up and led Kornli and Klein to the team members' room. Miss Ziga, please go replace Leonard from Channy's Gate. Miss Luo Yao, you will guard the house. Fry, go get old Neil. This matter might involve rituals, and we need his knowledge. Dunn said. What happened, Captain? Fry asked nervously, seeing Dunn's serious expression. We might have news of the Antigonus family's notebook's whereabouts. I'll drive. Kornli volunteered. I'll go. Leonard came up from downstairs, his ears had already picked up the discussion. If it really involves that notebook, the coachman's task is not just driving, but also pre-observing the surroundings and providing warnings. Please leave these matters to us senior team members. Since that's the case, and it's still raining outside, Kornli no longer vied for the position. He followed Captain Dunn, Klein, Old Neil, and Fry onto the team's four-person carriage. Leonard took the coachman's seat, putting on a thick windbreaker. Giddy up. The carriage slowly started, quickly heading towards the location where the two had been a few hours earlier. Oh, damn, a 200 gold-pound mission. Fry said enviously, why don't we usually get missions like this? My last mission for the security company was just to catch a cat that climbed a tree, and that old lady only gave us 1 gold pound as payment. The security company is just our disguise, the team missions are the most important. Old Neil, dressed in a black classical robe, said seriously. As expected of Old Neil, always prioritizing the team's missions. Of course, if there are any divination-related matters, you can consider entrusting them to me. Old Neil kindly linked arms with Klein beside him. How about one for each of us? Damn it. Good, good. Klein nodded repeatedly. Captain Dunn faced the window, slowly smoking his pipe, the aroma of tobacco filling the entire carriage. You're holding back laughter, aren't you, Captain? The carriage slowly stopped about 100 meters from the building. Leonard found a passerby to help watch the carriage, while the others followed Dunn to the entrance of the 3-story building. No movement around. Leonard carefully observed the surroundings. Damn it, this rain will destroy all traces. Which room? Captain Dunn looked at Klein. 3rd floor, the innermost room, the one to the left. Kornli, you and Leonard go last. Let Klein and Old Neil go in the middle. Captain Dunn tapped his pipe on the carriage door. Let's go up. The group filed in, following Captain Dunn up the stairs to the 3rd floor, their steps light, not disturbing the neighbors at all. Captain Dunn reached out, pulled out a revolver, put it into his right pocket, and gently pushed the tightly closed door. The door was locked. I'll do it. Kornli reached for a dagger at his waist, inserted it into the door crack, and gently pried it open. The door quietly opened a small crack. Everyone present suddenly felt a chill spread throughout their bodies. Kornli lightly clicked his back molars to activate his spirit vision, only to see more than a dozen vengeful spirits float out from the door crack, coldly staring at their surroundings with expressionless eyes. Klein immediately felt a chill, as if something was blowing cold air down his neck. Those are the spirits nearby, don't worry. Old Neil lightly tapped his glabella, activating his spirit vision. These guys won't harm us. Spirits, again. A foul odor wafted out from inside. Klein immediately felt an unbearable smell rush to his head. Unable to hold it in, he quickly walked to the window in the middle of the staircase and vomited outside. Ah. Besides these spirits, I don't sense any danger. Corpse collector, Fry looked at Captain Dunn, who was wrinkling his nose, seemingly sensing something. Old Neil. Captain Dunn said. Wait a moment, Captain. Old Neil took a bottle of potion from his pocket, walked over, and dripped 2 drops into Klein's nose. Then he handed it to Kornli, indicating for him to also put some in. This stuff will make you temporarily ignore the smell coming from inside. That smell, full of lemon, disinfectant, and lemon leaves, restored Kornli's ability to breathe. Although the air still contained a foul odor, it seemed acceptable now. He walked to the doorway, making a mysterious gesture with his right hand. Kornli saw a lifeless eye appear behind him, scanning everything inside through the door crack. As that eye looked to the left, it suddenly fixated on Kornli and Klein, pausing on them for a full second before continuing to look inside. There's no one inside, only a corpse. Old Neil released his right hand. Fry, following the captain's instructions, stepped forward and opened the door. The corpse of an old woman lay on a rocking chair, yellowish-green bodily fluids slowly oozing out. Lividity covered the entire body, and her lips were eerily upturned, as if she had heard something before her death. The opening door caused air to flow, and her already rotten eyeballs in their sockets dropped to the ground with a plop, accompanied by 2 pieces of decaying flesh from her arms. Fry strode into the room, not even considering wearing gloves, and began a detailed examination of the corpse, as if it wasn't a corpse but an enticing painting. Captain Dunn and Leonard followed him, meticulously examining the surroundings and any clues, their brows furrowed, occasionally exchanging whispers. Damn it, I'm definitely applying for a subsidy this month. Old Neil, pinching his nose, walked to the nearby staircase and stood beside Klein. Kornli, go downstairs and find a patrol officer. Captain Dunn's voice came from inside the room. We need to know the identity of this corpse. Klein, do you feel familiar with this place? Captain Dunn wiped the dust from the table with his gloved right hand. Klein walked into the room. The half-finished, spoiled coffee on the table, the cold charcoal in the stove, and the dust-covered curtains all made him feel very uncomfortable. It quickly overlapped with everything Klein saw before him. That familiar, been here before, feeling clearly emerged, and the illusory, fleeting screams once again pierced through the invisible barrier. Honiches. Flegre. Honiches. Flegre. Honiches. Flegre. It feels a little familiar. Klein frowned, reaching up to tap his glabella twice to close his spirit vision. The intertwining feelings of strangeness and familiarity made him feel unsuited to this place, as if he had just transmigrated and felt out of place with the world. I know. Captain, this is a patrol officer from nearby. Kornli brought an officer into the room. The latter, suppressing his nausea, observed the deceased's face for 3 seconds. Sorry, I don't know her. If you don't mind, I need to question the nearby tenants with my colleagues. The officer finished speaking in a rush, then dashed out of the room and leaned against the staircase window next to Klein, vomiting profusely. Suicide, or murder? Dunn turned to look at Fry, who had stood up. The corpse has been dead for at least 5 days. There are no external injuries, nor any obvious magical influences. It's temporarily impossible to determine. Further dissection will yield more results, Fry said expressionlessly. I can't get any more information here. Dunn nodded. The police support from outside had also arrived. They began questioning the nearby tenants in pairs. Kitty Stefana Bieber, between 55 and 60 years old, a widow, has been renting here with her son, Riel Bieber, for over 10 years. Her husband was a jeweler before he died. Her son is about 30 years old, unmarried, and inherited his father's business, earning around £1.15 per week. According to their neighbors, they haven't been seen for over a week, the officer reported to Captain Dunn based on his inquiries. So, that damned Antigonus family notebook is currently with Riel Bieber. Kornli found 2 wads of tissue paper to stuff into his nose, speaking in a muffled voice. Breathing through his mouth helped him avoid the nauseating stench. Do you have a photo of him? Captain Dunn asked the officer. I can go back and look, but you know, if the person didn't have a criminal record, the chances are very slim, the officer replied, suppressing the churning in his stomach. After saying this, he rushed out the door again, finding the window he would likely never forget in this lifetime. Old Neil, sense the surrounding environment and see if you can draw a portrait of Riel Bieber, Captain Dunn said, stepping out of the room. If not, we'll have to continue questioning the people around, though I don't trust drawings based on verbal descriptions much. Old Neil nodded, pulling out bottle after bottle of powder from his black classical robe and sprinkling them evenly around Kitty. Then, he took out several bottles of potion and sprinkled them in a circle around himself. Everyone retreated outside, watching Old Neil prepare what seemed to be a very intricate ritual. Old Neil closed his eyes, his lips moving slightly as he murmured mysterious prayers in a vague Hermes. Evernight goddess, you are more exalted than the cosmos, more ancient than eternity. You are the Lord of Crimson, Mother of Concealment. You are the Empress of Misfortune and Fear. You are the Lord of Slumber and Silence. I beseech the goddess's power. I beseech the Evernight's favor. I beseech you to reveal to me the appearance of the son of this poor woman, Kitty Stefana Bieber, in this room. Nightshade, oh, herb of the red moon, please transmit your power to my incantation. Moonflower, oh, herb of the red moon, please transmit your power to my incantation. Suddenly, his eyes turned pitch black. He pulled a fountain pen from his pocket, picked up a piece of scrap paper from the table, and began to draw rapidly. A few minutes later, he exhaled, his body swaying slightly, as if the ritual had drained him of his energy, barely standing as he looked at the portrait before him. Praise the goddess! Praise the goddess! Everyone, including Captain Dunn, made the 4-point sign of the red moon on their chests. Black hair, blue eyes, a full porcelain crown on the left side of his mouth, Old Neil said. That should be enough, Captain Dunn nodded. Fry, arrange for the forensic doctor to transport the corpse. We'll dissect it back at our station to continue searching for clues. The rest of you can come back with me. Captain, can I stay here and observe? Kornli asked. I seem to have a bit of interest in corpses too. After saying this, he wanted to slap himself. What kind of thing did he just say? I will respect your hobby. Captain Dunn's mouth twitched slightly. Everyone else, follow me. Hobby, huh? Fry instructed the officers to prepare a body bag and a carriage specifically for transporting corpses. He walked over and put his arm around Kornli's shoulder. I didn't expect you to have such avant-garde ideas. Do you want to spend a night with a fresh female corpse? I can definitely arrange a very clean room. Damn it, you touched the corpse just now, didn't you wash your hands? Kornli frowned and gently pushed away Fry's right hand with his index finger. Fry blinked. Ah, I forgot. A corpse collector won't get infected by diseases from the corrosive fluids on corpses, so. Despite this, he turned on the faucet and carefully washed his hands and arms, drying them thoroughly with the nearby curtain, then discarded it distastefully. A white carriage stopped downstairs. 2 forensic doctors in white clothes and crow-shaped protective helmets came up, greeted Fry familiarly, opened the body bag, and loaded Kitty's corpse into it before carrying it away. Kornli opened the window to air out the room. Gusts of cross breeze swept through, making the air in the room feel fresher. What are you looking for? Fry curiously watched Kornli looking out the window, glancing left and right as if searching for something. I'm thinking about something, Kornli muttered to himself. Klein only spent 2 or 3 days with that notebook and became disoriented, and Kitty's corpse has been dead for 5 days. The neighbors across the street said they haven't seen Bieber for a week. You mean, Bieber has spent more than 3 days with the Antigonus family notebook, and he might have become very abnormal, and the notebook has even affected him. Fry nodded. A very precise guess. Klein got that notebook, but the notebook made Klein give it to real Bieber, which means that notebook has its own thoughts. In other words, we are dealing with a notebook that can think, which is not strange in the Beyonder world. Why real Bieber? Is he connected to the Antigonus family in some way? You mean, a blood connection? Fry speculated. Possibly. Kornli, feeling the breeze, let his thoughts wander. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. He stepped onto the windowsill and jumped out, his right hand gripping the window, his left hand gently plucking a few pale yellow hairs from the joint of a nearby water pipe. Those were not human hairs. Damn it, how did you find that? Fry watched Kornli carefully find a piece of paper, wrap the hair in it, and put it in his pocket. Simple deduction, Kornli said. Now, let's go back to the team, and I promise you'll hear my entire reasoning process. Deduction, like what those detectives do. Fry rubbed the hair on his head. What a fascinating word. The two returned to the team, and everyone was still there. Kornli placed his findings on the table and began his statement. We already know that being with Antigonus's family notebook causes one to lose part of their memory, Kornli pointed at Klein. Klein only spent a few hours with that notebook each day, but that notebook must have been with Riel Bieber for at least 3 days. Moreover, we now know that this notebook chooses its holder based on its own will, and its decision to choose a holder should be related to its own name, which means it's related to the Antigonus family, or someone with a blood connection. This is an acceptable hypothesis, Dunn said. The notebook chose Riel Bieber, but the faint Antigonus family bloodline in Riel Bieber's body could not withstand the continuous erosion of the knowledge within the notebook. Therefore, after holding the notebook for 3 days, he was invaded. Kornli looked at Old Neil. Or rather, corrupted. Both words describe his current state very well, Old Neil nodded. We have reached a sound conclusion. Riel Bieber's condition at this time is very poor. Facing a tightly locked door, the corrupted him has lost most of his sanity and couldn't even think of opening the door, or locking it again after opening it. At this moment, his mother's corpse stimulated the remaining part of his sanity, driving him to leave the house. The only exit was the window. After Bieber was corrupted, he jumped out of the window. Although he had lost his sanity, his instincts remained. Jumping down recklessly would injure his body, but climbing down the drainpipe was a better choice. This is where and why I found these hairs. Clap, clap, clap. Leonard led the applause, and everyone followed Leonard, encouraging and agreeing with Kornli's deduction. Kornli covered his chest with his right hand and bowed slightly to the team members present, much like an actor taking a successful curtain call. So, we are now dealing with someone who has undergone a mental mutation, or rather, a humanoid. Dunn mused. This is truly a headache. Klein, try to perform a seer divination on this item to see if you can find clues about Bieber and that notebook. Klein placed the hair and Old Neil's drawing together, with the citrine on his left wrist suspended above them, and quietly chanted. This time, he planned to use the most effective dream divination. Repeat the question, remember it firmly, then let your astral body wander the spirit world in your dream to gain inspiration. Riel Bieber's current whereabouts. Riel Bieber's current whereabouts. Riel Bieber's current whereabouts. 7 times in a row, he leaned back slightly, his eyes involuntarily opening, as if something was obstructing his divination. Dream divination failed. Sorry, Captain, Klein shook his head regretfully. It seems something interfered with my divination. If the seer's divination is ineffective, then my method is also useless. Old Neil spread his hands. There are no more suitable rituals for finding people. You all can go home. Fry, thank you for dissecting the body tonight. I will send a telegram to the cathedral to ask if they have a better solution for this kind of problem. All right, Captain. Kornli, your deduction is very important, Dunn nodded. We all need to take a shower and wash the smell off our clothes. I just prepared a few bottles of nightshade essential oil. Soaking your clothes for a few minutes before washing them will leave a fresh scent of nightshade. Old Neil pulled out a few bottles of light green essential oil from his robe and handed them to the people who had just returned from the mission. Old Neil was indeed thoughtful. He would definitely reimburse it. In Old Neil's lessons to him, this kind of thing was called reasonable consumables. Kornli could already imagine Old Neil pulling out the yellow reimbursement form and handing it to the captain tomorrow. Very interesting deduction. Leonard walked out of the team's headquarters door and patted Kornli's shoulder beside him. How did you think of that? This marauder potion gave me a lot of help. Kornli rubbed his chin. I definitely wouldn't have thought of it before. Good night, Leonard. He turned right out of the door, and it wouldn't be long before he could get home and enjoy a refreshing sleep. Leonard looked darkly at Kornli's departing back, as if talking to himself. Do you think he has a problem? He used to be a very simple person, never able to think of any answers beyond 2 steps, let alone the deduction just now. Where are there so many problems? The familiar voice in his head said, I think he's a very good person. You should be friends with him, not suspect your teammate like this. Old man, I've never heard you evaluate someone like that, Leonard replied angrily in his mind. Respect your elders, you fellow who lacks a door bolt in your mouth. Pale Zoroast had grown accustomed to Leonard's address. Everyone has secrets. At least for now, he is your teammate. Teammate, Leonard looked thoughtfully at the gradually darkening night. All right, teammate. The following Saturday and Sunday, life returned to its usual quietness, with no more cases disturbing them. Kornli began to enjoy a peaceful life of reading. After more than a week of studying, his Hermes had reached the point where he could freely read documents written in Hermes and ancient Hermes. However, his mastery of other languages was not as good as his Hermes. It seems the Marauder's language ability is temporarily limited to Hermes. Are you still reading? Old Neil walked in from outside, watching Kornli reading an ancient Hermes report. He had read it himself before. That report was obscure and difficult to understand, but from Kornli's reading speed, he seemed to greatly enjoy the pleasure reading brought him. Young man, you should go out more, see the outside world, listen to operas, chat with like-minded people, or go to a bar for a drink and flirt with pretty girls. All of that is much better than your current lifeless appearance. Is that so? Am I already this decadent? Kornli looked up at Fry opposite him. He nodded, indicating that old Neil was right. All right, after work, I'll go to the bank to deposit money first, then look for a suitable seer club. It's time to uncover the mystery of that ring. Please help me open an account. After work, Kornli arrived at the Backlund Bank in Tingen City, pulled out all his savings from a thick money bag, totaling 1,532 gold pounds, 4 sol, and 12 pence. He deposited 1,500 gold pounds into the account, ignored the seductive glances from the counter lady, took his passbook and an unregistered checkbook for 500 gold pounds, and left at a near run. This place was too terrifying. Ever since he entered the bank, the power brought by his Marauder potion had been rapidly alarming him. There were many customers in front of and behind him depositing or withdrawing money, with 5 or 6 suitable targets within 10 meters. Not to mention the vault behind the counter lady, which held an enormous attraction for him. This was no different from a hungry mouse running into a rice jar full of rice. He needed to use strong self-control to keep his hands in check, to remain calm and ignore the money bags that were so easily within reach. That unregistered checkbook had 10 checks, each for 50 gold pounds. They could be used by simply tearing one off and giving it to the recipient. Kornli had prepared this for purchasing a Sequence 8 potion and its formula on the black market. He still remembered that the Sequence 8 potion formula was called Swindler. Now, it was time to find a suitable divination club. Hello, how may I help you? At the front desk of the divination club on Horse Street, the receptionist Angelica greeted the arriving Kornli with her usual enthusiasm. Do you need a diviner to serve you, or would you like to join our divination club? Whether you are a beginner, an enthusiast, or even a seasoned diviner, you are most welcome. I am just a traveler seeking answers. Kornli smiled. I wonder if any diviners are available now. Angelica smiled, took a folder from beside her, opened it, and placed it in front of Kornli. Haynes Vincent is our best diviner here, but his price is 4 sol per session. And to get his divination, you need to book 2 days in advance. He can provide all mainstream or unconventional divination methods, and even niche divinations like mirror divination can be interpreted very well. Mr. Klein Moretti's divinations have increased recently, but his divination results are also very good. If it's your first time getting a divination, I recommend him to you. It only costs 8 pence per session, and he happens to be available now. Damn it, Klein is in this club. And that scoundrel Haynes. It seems that besides digesting the Marauder potion, I should spend more time in this divination club recently. Angelica detailed the situations of all the diviners, then looked at Kornli enthusiastically. Which diviner would you like to choose? If this is your first divination, I highly recommend Mr. Klein Moretti. According to his recent client descriptions, he is an incredible diviner, and the price is very reasonable. He has dabbled in most divination methods. Klein, how many sports cars did you buy for the front desk lady to get such a strong recommendation? Sorry, none of them seem suitable for me. Kornli pulled out a 1 banknote and held it in his hand. Seeing no one around, he secretly slipped it to Angelica while she was exchanging folders. Do you have any other divination clubs you can recommend to me? Angelica's eyes lit up. This tip was a considerable income for her, the man was very generous. She cautiously looked left and right, leaned forward, and whispered, "Number 12, Elvin Street. The diviners there should be to your liking." After saying that, she leaned back to her original posture, a habitual professional smile on her face. "It's a pity there isn't a suitable diviner for you here." "Well then, I wish you a pleasant day." "Thank you." Kornli turned and left. Soon after his figure departed, Klein slowly walked out from inside. "It seems there's no one who wants a divination today, Miss Angelica." "It appears so, Mr. Klein. Are you leaving?" "No, please get me a cup of Dixie coffee." Klein shook his head. "I've been reading all day, I need a refreshing drink." "All right, Mr. Klein." "Ah, welcome, dear sir." At the entrance of Cameron Magic and Divination Club, at number 12, Elvin Street, a young lady welcomed Kornli with extremely enthusiastic gestures. "You're here for a divination, right? We have over a dozen excellent diviners here to provide you with various services. I can first introduce you to the areas our diviners specialize in. What type of divination do you need?" It looks very professional, and there are many types of diviners. Moreover, the long dress on the front desk lady looked very much to his taste from his previous life. "Then, please have Miss Helena serve me." Kornli chose a lady skilled in crystal ball divination and dream divination from the document in front of him. "You have excellent taste. Miss Helena is one of our best diviners here. Please follow me." Kornli was led to a very private room on the second floor. The room was bathed in the dim light filtered by dark red velvet curtains, as if steeped in diluted blood. A mahogany round table occupied the center, its cracked texture naturally forming a counterclockwise spiral, looking as if someone had scratched it with their fingernails. That person must have endured inhuman torture and had enough obsessive-compulsive disorder to scratch out such a desperate and uniform pattern with their fingernails. Kornli's mind wandered as a lady in a pink long dress slowly walked in from outside, holding a crystal ball. She looked at Kornli and curtsied slightly. "Good evening, I am Helena." "Good evening, Miss Helena." The two sat opposite each other, and Helena placed the crystal ball on the table. "What is your request today? Are you looking for love, inquiring about future opportunities, or searching for clues from the past?" "My specialty is crystal ball divination, and I also have some research in tarot and dream divination." Kornli took out the silver ring and pushed it to the center of the table. "I want to know, what does this ring lead to?" Miss Helena picked up the ring and examined it carefully. When she saw the small characters inside, she suddenly covered her mouth and smiled. "This question doesn't require divination, I can tell you the answer right now, dear Mr. Occult Enthusiast." "Huh." Kornli showed 2 rows of white teeth. "It seems you are also an occult enthusiast, dear Miss Helena." "Of course, divination itself is part of the occult," Helena said softly. "This ring belongs to Spirit of the Candle Eater, at 62 Stewart Street. There's a gathering every Sunday at 8 in the evening. You can choose many things there." 8 o'clock, is that today? It was already past 6 when he arrived here. If he wanted to go and see, his time was very tight. "Can you tell me more about that place, dear Miss Helena?" Kornli took out a 5 banknote and pushed it over. Kornli arrived outside the Cameron Magic and Divination Club, and called another private carriage. "Please go to 62 Stewart Street in the South City." According to Miss Helena, the Spirit of the Candle Eater was a relatively safe underground black market, filled with all sorts of strange and wonderful items, but one needed a certain discerning eye to acquire valuable items at a suitable price. The owner behind it was rumored to have powerful influence in Tingen City and Backlund. Kornli recalled that one of the main ingredients in his marauder potion was the core of the spirit of the candle eater. Could this underground black market be related to the marauder sequence? According to his familiar memories, the owners of the marauder sequence were the Amon family, the Jacob family, and the Zoroast family. He didn't even need to think about the former, he had to avoid Amon before reaching sequence 2. That omnipresent monocle was extremely troublesome. The Jacob family and the Zoroast family prided themselves as hermits of fate. Did these two families leave their heritage and descendants in a place like Tingen City? Both of these families were angel families, and their profound heritage meant that even with few members, their remaining Beander items and family names were a formidable power. A strong feeling urged Kornli to go and see, perhaps he could obtain the formula he wanted there. "Sir, we've arrived. The fare is 15 sol." The coachman slowly stopped the carriage at the entrance of 62 Stewart Street, and a hand reached out from the small window. "Thank you." Kornli took out his money pouch, paid the fare, and jumped off the carriage. The sign next to the door clearly belonged to a dilapidated bar, with "The Endless Satchel" written on its signboard. A few scattered customers were quietly drinking light beer at the bar. Indeed, for a marauder, a sufficiently large satchel was needed to hold all stolen goods. Kornli could now almost certainly confirm that this place had some connection to his marauder potion. Kornli calmly pushed the door open and walked in. In an instant, he felt more than a dozen pairs of eyes simultaneously cast upon him. He calmly walked to the bar and extended his left hand, which bore a ring. 1 sol. The bartender glanced at the ring on his left hand, drew a quarter-filled glass of dark beer from a nearby barrel, and placed it in front of him with a thud. "Bastard, you could have just robbed me, but you gave me a mouthful of dark beer. You really are a good person." Kornli took out a 1 sol banknote from his bosom with his right hand and pushed it over. The bartender's right hand swiftly moved across the table, and the banknote vanished. His hand's speed was very fast, comparable to his own. "Go inside, the second door on your right," the bartender whispered, casually picking up the glass of dark beer and drinking it down. "I was wrong, you are an absolute bastard." Kornli got up and walked inside, pushing open the second door on his right. Before him was a dark, narrow wooden staircase. The staircase was only wide enough for half a foot, and every few meters, only a single candle provided faint illumination. He carefully descended the stairs, pushed open another door, and found himself in another small room. 2 guards saw someone enter, and one of them handed him a black owl mask. "Don't cause trouble, or we'll tear you into pieces and throw you out," the other warned. What a friendly and kind greeting. This room was not large, but everyone who needed to leave would pass through it. 2 pistols plus a short knife or dagger were enough to intercept anyone who wanted to cause trouble here. The security measures were very complete. Kornli put on the mask, and the person next to him pushed open another door in the room, tilting his head to motion Kornli to enter. Kornli walked in. Inside was a hidden space similar in size to a modern-day basketball court. Gas lamps were placed every 10 meters on the walls, illuminating the entire room brightly. Thick tapestries hung on the walls, revealing the sturdy outline of marble in the middle. The floor was covered with equally thick wool carpets. On both sides of the room, more than 20 people in black robes and identical owl masks sat quietly, with various scattered items laid out before them, waiting for customers to arrive. "This is a black market, so you all have to wear black robes, how fitting." There were already more than a dozen customers in the room, quietly selecting items at the stalls or softly inquiring about prices and uses. No one spoke loudly. In the 4 corners of the room stood 4 guards in hunting attire, their waists bulging, clearly prepared. Kornli took a deep breath. The air here was no different from outside. There were clearly ventilation shafts leading to the surface, and more than one. He slowly looked along the stalls on the left side. Various herbs, talismans, essential oils, and potions were the main goods on display. There were few things he needed. A strong impulse drew Kornli, making him eager to look ahead. At the third stall, a rhombus-shaped talisman was emitting a faint red glow in his eyes. Is this a good item? There were no other customers in front, so he walked over casually, browsing the stall, picking and choosing, and finally picked up the talisman. The talisman was made of a mixture of brass, mithril, and a trace of gold, with a circle of mysterious symbols carved on it, as well as several characters seemingly carved in the giant dragon language. What is this? Kornli picked up the talisman and asked the stall owner. I don't know. This thing has been with me for a long time. If you like it, 2 gold pounds, a hoarse voice came from behind the owl mask. Greedy fellow, Kornli muttered softly. Although his voice was not loud, it was enough for the stall owner opposite to hear. I'll give you 4 sol. After a brief negotiation, Kornli acquired the talisman for 16 sol. He asked the stall owner for a cheap string, threaded it through the talisman's only small hole, and carefully hung it around his neck. This item should be useful to him. Kornli simply walked around the room once, found nothing worth buying, and turned to leave. Just then, from the other end of the room, a man in a black suit walked out. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's auction. The auction will begin in 5 minutes. Tickets are only 1 gold pound each. Only 10 seats, 10 seats. An auction. They have these things in this era too. He watched as several people walked up to the man, took out a banknote, handed it to him, and were then led away by a guard nearby. That money-grubbing fellow is here again, the stall owner next to him muttered softly. Customer, there's nothing good in there. If you're interested, that 1 gold pound can buy you 2 bottles of the enlargement potion you have in your hand here, enough for 4 nights, letting you fully experience a man's pleasure. You fake medicine-selling bastard, who knows what messy ingredients are in that potion? Since he was already here, it seemed a bit unreasonable not to take a look. Kornli put down the potion in his hand, walked over to the man, and handed him a 1 gold pound banknote. Welcome, dear 10th customer. The man took the banknote and shook it, seemingly to verify its authenticity. The crisp sound satisfied him as he tucked it into his bosom. Please. Kornli followed the man to the corner. He lifted a thick tapestry, signaling Kornli to enter. Inside was a 60 square meter room. The thick carpet was soft enough to sink his entire foot into, clearly not on the same level as the common carpets outside. 9 people were already seated in the room, and most only glanced at Kornli as he entered, continuing to enjoy their delicious drinks in their seats. Please, esteemed guest. A female attendant in a long dress led Kornli to the last available seat. The soft velvet sofa and the gentle gas lamp on the small table beside it made him feel as if he had arrived in a cozy private study. What drink would you like, coffee or black tea? The attendant asked softly. Please give me a cup of Intis Highland coffee, no sugar, Kornli replied. The delicious drink was quickly served, and Kornli's right hand gently played with the cup, but he did not drink the coffee. It is best not to consume any drinks in an unfamiliar place, personal safety is always the priority. Oh, hello everyone, my dear mysticism enthusiasts. The man who had led Kornli came to the front, dancing a recently popular Intis court dance. I am today's auctioneer, you can simply call me Mr. Thorn. Today, we have prepared 6 high-quality items with Beander powers. We will legally plunder your wallets as much as possible, so please be prepared. The humorous opening remarks brought bursts of laughter from the room. Then, the first item, a necklace from the Church of the Eternal Blazing Sun. Auctioneer Thorn had a female attendant bring over a tray, and on it, a gleaming golden necklace sparkled in the sunlight for everyone to see. Wearing it will make you unconsciously praise the sun, but the ghosts, water ghosts, specters, or spirits of the darkness world will unconsciously stay away from your body. If you plan to explore a tomb or some unknown corner, this will be a very good Beander item. It cannot be worn for more than 2 hours at a time, otherwise you will forget your original faith and become a loyal believer of the Church of the Eternal Blazing Sun. After use, you will need 4 hours of alone time. My suggestion is to stay away from your significant other and quietly stay in a quiet hotel or under a bed, Thorn said solemnly, raising his right index finger. All Beander items will have different side effects. You can borrow them, but power that does not belong to you will ultimately abandon you. Not bad, they even know to properly remind buyers of the side effects of Beander items. Starting price, 30 gold pounds. Please bid, ladies and gentlemen. 35 gold pounds. A gentleman was the first to raise his right hand. 38 gold pounds. This item had some use for him, but not much. Kornli changed his posture and quietly watched everyone bid for this Beander item. After several rounds of fierce bidding, this Beander item was sold for 111 gold pounds. The winner was the gentleman who had first raised his hand. I see everyone's enthusiasm for this auction. So, the next Beander item is a blue earring. It can grant you the ability to breathe underwater for no more than 10 minutes, while also improving your swimming ability and providing resistance to cold. Looks good, but what's the side effect? The gentleman from before interrupted him. After use, you will not be able to eat any seafood for 1 day, Thorn said. During that time, eating any seafood will make you feel as disgusted as if you had eaten human flesh. You will unconsciously talk to fish, play a game of Gwent with scallops, or dance with a whole circle of seaweed wrapped around your body. In human eyes, you will be considered mentally ill, spending your days with barred windows, and bread and water will be your only diet for the rest of your life. The side effects of this item seemed acceptable, and it was sold for 200 gold pounds. Then, the next one. Thorn's enthusiasm was high, and the next 4 Beander items were auctioned off one by one at the fastest speed. Wait, Kornli frowned. All the items auctioned were necklaces, rings, and earrings, very small items. In Kornli's eyes, they all had one common characteristic. Very small, very suitable for a marauder to steal. These must all be stolen goods. I've walked into a fence. How amusing, the Jacob family and the Russell family have actually organized a small thieves association underground and are using its power to sell stolen goods. Given their former family power, what use would worldly money be to them? Are they preparing to overthrow a country, or attempting to restore their family's power? They are angel families, did they still pursue such things? No matter what, he should find a way to leave here. This is the last Beander item for today. Thorn bowed slightly. So, today's auction concludes here. Kornli stood up, following everyone out, preparing to leave. As he was about to pass through the tapestry, Thorn stepped forward, blocking his way and lowering the tapestry. What do you mean? Kornli asked calmly. Please don't misunderstand, sir, an elder of our organization wishes to meet with you, that's all. Thorn's face held a half-smile, and the guard beside him took a step forward, pulling open his coat and placing his hand on his gun holster. I thought this place would be as safe as the rumors said. Kornli helplessly raised his hands. You actually lay hands on a potential client. Potential client, do you mean those guys who buy Beander items with gold pounds? Thorn seemed to have heard something amusing. Ha ha ha, what a huge joke. Thinking they can become noble existences with 1 or 2 Beander items. Those things are worthless to us, or rather, in the face of Beander power. You are also a Beander, you should understand what I mean. How did they know he was a Beander? This way. Thorn led Kornli behind the seat he had just occupied. He lightly knocked on the wall with his hand, and the wall silently opened, revealing an even more luxuriously decorated room. Inside the room, a lady in a black cloak was slowly swirling a glass of red wine, looking at Kornli with a mocking gaze as he entered. Thorn bowed slightly to the lady, stepped back, and the wall silently closed, perfectly sealed. A faint, almost imperceptible pressure enveloped the room. Kornli immediately felt an invisible force pulling him, guiding him to sit on the sofa opposite the lady. Please sit, our dear marauder. Good evening, madam, Kornli said, meeting her gaze calmly. He couldn't back down against a superior like her, otherwise, he would only be seen as weak. The fate of the weak can be easily decided by the strong. Alec Thorn is dead. I killed him myself. Kornli did not hide it. He took off the ring on his left hand and placed it quietly on the small table between them. Damn it, Coming to this black market today was a mistake. What a pity. I thought he would quickly consume the potion after buying that formula. What a timid fellow. The lady put down her red wine and sighed slightly. She leaned forward, revealing her beautiful face under the gas lamp. Her golden hair was simply draped behind her, with only a mischievous strand escaping. She played with that strand of golden hair with her right hand, looking at Kornli with a teasing gaze. You're quite bold. He killed many people, even his own subordinates. I was just eliminating a menace for Tingen City. Eliminating a menace. This phrase deeply caught the other party's attention. You are an official Beander. The lady's eyes narrowed slightly, and her right hand gently lifted, a powerful pressure pressing Kornli firmly onto the sofa. I cannot tolerate your presence here. The lady leaned back and clapped her hands. The door in the wall quietly opened again, and Thorn, who had been waiting at the entrance, stepped forward. Madam, please give your orders. Kill him. Throw the body outside the city to feed the wolves. The lady picked up her wine glass and took a sip, deciding Kornli's life and death with ease, as effortlessly as deciding the menu for the evening. As you wish, madam. Thorn walked forward with a sinister grin, clamping Kornli's arms tightly. Kornli felt the other party's hands like giant crab claws, holding him firmly and dragging him out. The opponent was a Beander who relied on strength to survive, likely a warrior sequence. The marauder's strength was as ridiculous as a chicken countering an eagle in front of him. What to do? He only had a few seconds left to live. Should he ask the Evernight goddess for help? It might work, but would the goddess think he was useless and abandon him? Even if it worked, he wouldn't have time to prepare the items for the ritual. He might still have time for one sentence. Think, you blockhead, think fast. He got it. A flash of inspiration struck Kornli's mind. Is your surname Jacob or Zoroast? Kornli asked with his last ounce of strength just before he was dragged out the door. Release him. The lady's cold voice rang in Kornli's ears. Get out. Let me ask this little fellow what he knows. Phew, saved for now. Thorn glared at Kornli with resentful eyes, bowed slightly, and backed out of the room. The large door in the wall closed silently again. You know a lot, my dear little fellow. The lady took a glass from a nearby shelf, poured Kornli a glass of red wine, and placed it in front of him. My name is Diana Gallias. My surname follows my good-for-nothing husband, but my maiden name, as you said, is Jacob. Esteemed Madam Diana Jacob, descendant of the Jacob family, please allow me to express my respect for your noble family name. Kornli nodded slightly to the other party, picked up the red wine glass, and took a big gulp. You were so cautious earlier that you didn't drink a single sip of Intis High Mountain coffee, but now you don't refuse 30-year-old Ormir red wine. Diana Jacob raised her eyebrows, looking at Kornli. Should I praise your taste in red wine, or should I admire your caution? When arriving in a strange place, unfamiliar drinks are not advisable to try, but when I knew you could dispose of my life at will, whether this glass was delicious wine or poison made no difference to me. Kornli smacked his lips. You could save a bit and give me a cheap table wine, I still wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Ha ha ha. Diana Jacob laughed until tears streamed down her face. Interesting little fellow. I haven't seen anyone like you in a long time. What conspiracy do you have coming here today? Conspiracy. I am just a marauder looking for the next sequence potion formula. The official channels don't have further formulas, so I can only search underground. I find it very strange. The Jacob family was once such a prominent family. Why establish an underground black market in Tingen City? Does worldly money still have any use for someone of your status? Kornli leaned back on the sofa and took another sip of Ormir red wine, speaking eloquently as if he had an equal status to Diana. Money is a wonderful thing. It can control people's lives and influence the direction of the world. Family, honor, these ethereal things require strong power to control, and money is just one of those powers. Diana gently wiped away the liquid from the corner of her eye with her index finger, left by her smile. I can give you what you want, but what will you give in return? I have nothing on me that you would value, but you can try betting on me. Kornli drank the red wine in his glass in one gulp, the alcohol causing a slight flush on his face. A courageous statement. I'll give you a chance to convince me. This was his chance. If you bet now, the stake is just a penny to you, but you can gain a loyal ally. However, if you bet next year, you might need a £1 stake to gain an ally. And after some more time, Kornli spread his hands. I'm afraid the money you'll need will exceed £100, or even more. Your tone is not small, and your courage also impresses me. Diana Jacob took a small sip of red wine. If my husband had half your courage, I probably wouldn't have had to drown him in a ditch. Kornli involuntarily swallowed. So the other party was a black widow, probably after something her husband possessed. However, you don't have the chips to call yourself an ally yet. As you said, I truly don't care about this penny. If your life is on the right side of the scale, considering your courage just now, it can barely be established. Diana Jacob extended her right hand. A pen and a blank sheet of paper floated over from the nearby table. She quickly wrote a few strokes on it and handed it to Kornli. Kornli took the paper and examined it carefully under the gas lamp. It read, Sequence 8, Swindler. Main ingredients: 1 man-faced cage herb, 1 bewitching worm swarm larva. Auxiliary ingredients: 100 milliliters of pure water, 20 milliliters of another person's tears, 1 lapis lazuli, 10 grams of white chestnut paste. He succeeded. He not only gained a chance to survive through deception but also obtained the formula he wanted. The formula is correct. Diana Jacob watched Kornli looking at it very seriously and couldn't help but laugh. You can take this paper with you, or find someone to verify its authenticity. I believe you wouldn't lie for a penny. Kornli tucked the formula into his embrace. Since I have already placed my bet, your life is temporarily stored with me. Diana Jacob put down her wine glass. I will find you when needed. My owl has already remembered your scent. A large black owl flapped its wings and flew over from the side, landing on Diana's shoulder, staring at Kornli with eyes like the night. Kornli nodded silently. His fate was already controlled by another hand. This hand looked very dangerous, but before the goddess, he still had a chance to survive. Diana Jacob clapped her hands, and the door in the wall opened again. Thorn stepped forward. See this esteemed Mr. Penny out of here. He is one of us now. Madam. Thorn instinctively widened his eyes. The owl on Diana Jacob's shoulder screeched, expressing extreme displeasure with Thorn's reaction. Diana Jacob's gaze slowly swept over him, seemingly displeased with his reaction. If that is your command, madam. Thorn's mind spun rapidly. He took a step back and bowed deeply to Diana Jacob in front of him. That deep resentment lingered on Thorn's body. Kornli glanced at Thorn's face, deeply engraving that disgusting face in his mind. This bastard clearly wanted to kill me just now. I remember you, you bastard. Take that ring. It's still useful. Diana Jacob picked up the ring with her left hand. The ring spun countless times in the air and flew directly into Kornli's embrace. Explain it to him. Yes, madam. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.